Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Scion Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku had superhero mutation quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya stood there on the rooftop contemplating what his role model had just told him. No, if you're quirkless you can't become a hero. Izuku had always wanted a straight answer, and when it was the number one hero telling you couldn't, then maybe it truly was impossible. He looked at the edge of the building and thought, what if Kaken was right? What if he got lucky in his next life? Izuku approached the edge, inching his way closer until he was looking over the edge. He got up on the ledge and stuck a foot out over it just to feel what it's like, just to feel in control of his future. All he would have to do is lean forward just a little bit and that would be it. He weighed his options and suddenly he was hit with reason. What am I doing? He jumped. He climbed down onto the ledge and backed away from it as fast as possible. He put his hands on his knees and took a deep breath. His heart was pounding, and he was trying to get it under control. He saw a wet spot on the concrete roof beneath his feet and thought for a second that maybe it had started to rain. Until he realized that the wet spots were coming from the splashing of his tears on the cement. He ran his sleeve down his face. He didn't even know where these tears came from. They weren't sad tears. God knows how many times he has felt those. But they weren't happy with tears either. Maybe it was the famous Midoriya tears, or maybe it was his body celebrating succeeding on self-preservation. Now that Izuku had finally gotten his heart rate down and his breathing under control, he thought about it some more. Maybe All Might was right in another way, who said that people besides heroes couldn't save people. Sure, it wasn't as glamorous, but it was never really about the fame for Izuku as long as he could save people. He dried his tears and climbed down the ladder into the alley below. He walked out into the street and looked up at the ledge he was just standing on. Maybe I should talk to Mom about seeing a therapist. He almost forgot about his mom when he was up there. Could you imagine if he actually would have jumped? What would his mom do? How would him not being there affect her? Izuku felt oddly happy. He had a new outlook on life. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, and stepped forward, KZZT. He heard a noise that sounded like static, saw a flash of every color imaginable even though he swore he had his eyes closed. Felt air rush past him. As if he were falling, he opened his eyes and saw concrete rushing towards him. No, I swear I didn't jump. He had gotten off that roof. Hadn't he planted his feet on that sidewalk? No, I don't want this anymore, so I changed my mind. I can't go yet, I can't just leave her alone. Maybe his mind had played a trick on him to make the reality of jumping off the building easier to digest. The last words that left his lips were, "Sorry Mom, I guess I wasn't strong enough." He closed his eyes, reluctantly accepting the fate he had chosen to wait for his body to make contact with the floor. As much as he hated himself for jumping, he hoped that if reincarnation existed, he would get a quirk in his next life. Thwip. Izuku felt something stick to his blazer. Don't worry kid, I got you. Izuku felt as if his descent had slowed down and felt as if he were swinging through the air. He opened his eyes and saw the concrete moving fast, but it was no longer coming at him, instead of moving parallel. He looked at where he felt something connected to his body. He saw a white rope with a frayed tip connected to his school blazer, and following the rope to its origin he saw a hero in a red and blue costume holding onto it as they were swinging through the air. Suddenly Izuku felt tired and passed out. The last thing on his mind being, I don't remember a pro hero with that coloring scheme. Parker looked down at the boy he had just caught, noticing he passed out. Better get him to the infirmary ASAP. But how did a kid end up falling out of the Parker Industry Hadron Collider? 2 minutes in alternate Japan. Neji Sakamoto had been a young man once. He remembers the good old days of running around and using his quirk when he thought no one was looking. There he was cleaning his shop when he saw All Might jumping away from the top of the apartment complex across the street. He had gone inside and told his wife about it. Just like most people in Japan, they were both All Might fans. He might be in his early 70s, but seniors can have an interest too. He went back outside and saw a green-haired boy come down the alley ladder on the building All Might had just been on. A fellow fan, Mr. Neji thought. He had a beaming smile as he was walking down the sidewalk. Maybe he found something from All Might up there, or even better, maybe he got an autograph. Suddenly Mr. Neji heard something static and saw the green-haired boy very deliberately step into a portal of some sort and disappear. Must be the kid's quirk. Mr. Neji thought maybe he should report this to the police as unregistered quirk usage. But decided against it. After all, he remembered what it was like to be young. Parker had seen lots of odd things in his life. But a boy with dyed green hair falling out of his Hadron Collider was not one. Now that boy was laying down in the medical facility of Parker Industry. Doc Connors, why hasn't he woken up? It's been 10 hours already. Peter looked at the passed out boy. Well, preliminary medical examinations suggest that there were no signs of concussion. He did have some bruising and burn marks, but I don't think any of those are causing his current condition. So if I was to merit a guess, I would say shock, weight, bruising and burns. You think that from the machine? Doubtful the burns are more than 10 hours old. I would say it's more likely from his homestead. Are you saying the kid was abused? Peter's fist clenched up a bit. I can't say for certain, but someone hit and burned this kid, and it looks to have happened more than once. So, you say that he just appeared out of nowhere? Connors looks at the boy. Yeah, none of the security cameras caught anything. Connors grabs the backpack and looks through the contents. Could be espionage. We were said to even be ahead of Stark on our collider tech. Parker keeps looking at the boy passed out on the bed. Doubtful. I checked his stuff earlier, no tech or recording devices, just a phone from an unfamiliar brand with no current video on it. The date seems to be off as well. Besides that, just some standard school supplies, books, pencils, and pens. Connors looks at one of the notebooks, seeing a bunch of drawings. Seems to enjoy drawing hero costumes, but no one that I recognize. Maybe he wants to become a comic artist. Peter looks. It's good to have hobbies when you're younger. What type of lettering are these? Asked Connors. Peter inspected. Looks like kanji to me. Can you read it? Peter shook his head. No, but I'll see if any of the interns can. Peter grabbed the book and put it down next to him. So, what do you suggest we do? Connors gave the boy a once-over. I say once he wakes up, we try to find out if he has any metal bits in him. If not, then run him through the MRI and do a CT scan as well, just to make sure there's nothing wrong with him. Izuku woke up in an unfamiliar environment. Where am I? He looked around and saw it looked like he was in the patient wing of a hospital. He looked down at his arm and saw an IV drip. Why am I in a hospital? Suddenly a noise came from down the hall. Izuku tried to get a look to see who it was. He saw a slightly older girl in a lab coat. Hi, there, it seems you finally woke up. I'm Akio. I'll go alert Mr. Parker, you're regaining consciousness, and I'll be right back. Well, they seem to be speaking Japanese, so maybe I just passed out in the street. Footsteps were coming down the hallway, and it sounded more than just one person. There Izuku saw a brown-haired man who looked like a foreigner in a lab coat wearing a t-shirt underneath. Followed by a slightly smaller man with blonde messy hair, glasses, and missing an arm, and behind the both of them stood the girl from earlier. The brown-haired man spoke up, Konnichiwa Watashin Anamiya Pitadisu. Peter looked back at Akio. Did I say that right? Akio shook her hand from side to side. Your pronunciation was okay, but you need to work on your accent. Connors laughed. That's probably an employee speak for you butchered it. Peter gives a slight frown. Well, I only started learning 3 hours ago. Izuku gives a small chuckle and spoke up, I thought it was okay. The three of them looked at Izuku. You speak English, Peter said while looking embarrassed. Just a bit, to be able to communicate a bit and understand. I watch a lot of American hero news. Peter nods apprehensively. Who's your favorite hero? All Might. Peter made a face in confusion. Must be some new guy on the scene, or maybe the kid's just a fan of the obscure. Izuku sat up. My name is Izuku Midoriya, so what hospital am I at that people are speaking English? Peter realized he had forgotten to mention something. This isn't a hospital. Welcome to Parker Industries, located in the great state of New York. Izuku sits there apprehensively. Oh cool. Wait, did you say New York? Yeah, the three said together. As in the United States, New York? Connor, Akio, and Peter all nodded yes. Then Izuku saw everything go black as he passed out once again. Izuku had only passed out for half an hour by the time he woke up. They had asked him why he was so surprised to be in New York. They were shocked when he said the last place he remembers being was in Hamamatsu, Japan. I hope Mom is okay. We will get you home as soon as we make sure. Okay. Now Midoriya was in a hospital gown. Standing to his side was Peter and Akio. Behind a piece of glass there was Connors. Okay, Midoriya, you're going to lay on this machine. We're going to take an MRI scan to make sure there is nothing wrong with you, just as a precaution. Izuku nodded. Are you sure you don't have any metal bracing, fillings, or artificial hips? Izuku looked at Peter weirdly with that last one. You never know. Izuku laid down. No, I don't have an artificial hip. Peter started the machine and he and Akio joined Connor behind the glass. How long before the preliminaries come out? Peter asked. Connor looked at him. 15 minutes. Why? After we check for head trauma, can you focus on the chest area? Connor looked worried. Peter, I know what you thinking, you barely know the kid. Peter got slightly miffed. That kid has bruises and markings all over his chest. What if he's a runaway? Connor sighed. Look, we don't know the kid's circumstances, and what are you going to do? Adopt him. Peter looked at Izuku in the machine. I'm going to do what I can. 90 minutes later Peter had taken Izuku to the cafeteria and Connors was looking at the MRI slices. He took in Peter's suggestion and checked on the chest scans. The bones looked normal but it did seem that there were a couple of hairline fractures but luckily nothing serious. His brain scans looked fine. All of a sudden Connor did a double take. "Hey, Akio." "Yes, Dr. Connor." Akio came in from shutting down the machine. "Was there a disturbance when the scan was going on?" Akio came to look at the scan. "No. Why is it blurry or something?" Akio glanced at it. "There seems to be nothing wrong." Connors looked at her. "It's thicker." Akio looked confused. "What is?" Connors pointed at the screen. "His skull wall is thicker, not just that his lung capacity looks larger, and from a preliminary viewing he has more blood veins like it moves more oxygen." Connor pulls out his phone and calls Peter. "Hey Peter, is the kid there?" "No, he went to the bathroom." "Why?" "I think I might have to agree with your idea of him being a runaway." "What, why?" Connors takes his glasses off. "He has biology similar to someone who has the X gene." "You think he's a mutant?" Connor rubbed his eyes. "I think there is a possibility that could also explain him coming out of nowhere. What if he has a teleportation mutation?" Peter looked towards the bathroom. "Could also explain why he has those marking parents who could be anti-mutant." Connor nodded. "But why hasn't he said anything about it?" Peter takes his empty tray and puts it in the trash can of the cafeteria. Well, considering the marking on his chest, he was probably punished any time he showed his mutation off. Peter could hear Connors shuffle on the other side of the call. "Then what do we do?" asked Connors. "I'll contact Professor Xavier. Maybe he will be more comfortable talking to one of his own. He also suggests that he bring someone fluent in Japanese." Back in alternate Japan. Inko was tired. Yesterday her friend's son had gotten attacked by a villain and later that night her son had never come home. At first, she thought that maybe Izuku had gone to the hospital to visit Katsuki and check on his friend. But after she had called Mitsuki and learned that Izuku hadn't gone to the hospital at all, she went straight to the police office to report on her missing son. They had asked her if she was sure her son was missing and not just at some friend's house or perhaps got picked up by a family member. She explained that Izuku's closest family was her ex-husband in America and she doubted that Izuku was somehow in the US. Then she got mad when they asked her if there was any reason for her baby to run away. She tried to stay calm at their insinuations and answer that Izuku was a mostly happy boy. When they had asked her what she had meant by mostly, she mentioned he was quirkless and wanted to become a hero. When she said that Izuku was quirkless, the police officer's expression changed from passive to worried. She remembered his words exactly. "Call Detective Tsukachi, we have another missing quirkless kid." They escorted her out to her car and told her they would call her if there were any leads on her son. They would call her. So there she was, passed out at the table, tired from crying with the phone in her hand, dreaming that her baby was safe at home. James Howlett was just riding around when he got a telepathic message from Xavier. "Logan, I need you to head to Manhattan. There's a possibility of a new student being at Parker Industries." Logan revved on the throttle of his motorcycle. "Xavier, I don't know if you realize, but kids aren't my expertise." The wind was rushing by Logan's head. "Trust me, Logan, I know where your expertise lies, but Mr. Parker said that his Japanese was the kid's first language and I know you're fluent. I believe he could open up." Logan chuckled. "Xavier, doesn't your telepathy translate what you're saying automatically? What's the real reason you want me to go?" Xavier sighed. "Logan, Parker said that there were possible signs of abuse in the forms of bruises on his chest, had hairline fractures on the ribcage. Now I know my traumatic experiences can't even compare to yours, and you have a way with people who have had similar experiences and would be more likely to open up to you." Logan went silent. "Logan? What's the address?" Logan could almost feel Xavier's joy. Izuku had been trying to call his mom for the past 3 hours. Mr. Parker said that this phone had worldwide coverage. Yet every time he called home, he was met with a voice saying that the number he was trying to call was non-existent. He tried to call his Aunt Mitsuki and got the same message. Finally, he even tried to call Kaken expecting the same result, but someone had answered the phone. "This is individual waste disposal. How can I help you?" "Sorry, wrong number." Izuku hung up quickly before he burst out laughing. The last thing he tried was calling the police station in his hometown to ask if there were any missing person reports for an Izuku Midoriya, and nothing. Izuku had gotten blood work done earlier at the request of Mr. Parker, so he was just sitting eating saltines. He had gotten his notebooks back along with a change of cloth they had gotten him. Izuku opened his notebook to a new page and started drawing the hero that had saved him the other day. Dr. Connors had been studying the blood that they had gotten from Izuku for hours without rest. Peter got off the elevator into the medical lab. "What's the thing you wanted to show me?" "Peter, take a look at this." Peter looked closely at the screen. What am I looking at? Okay, this first one is my blood with a bit of the lizard serum. Peter looks at Connors worryingly. Connor, I thought we had gone over this. The lizard serum doesn't work, it's volatile, the mutations are too risky. I mean, look at it, the blood cells are completely mutated. Connors scratched his head. I know, Peter, but look at this. Peter looked back at the computer screen. On the screen was blood that was non-reactive. Does this also have lizard serum in it? Is it non-reactive? I thought so too, so I injected a pair of lab rats. As you know, this pair of lab rats were amputees. The one injected with my blood mixed with the serum came out as expected. Connors pulls out a dead lizard rat hybrid, but it had all its limbs back. I put it down, it had a horrible temperament. But this one, on the other hand, Connors pulled out another rat that had all 4 limbs but looked like a normal rat. Peters looked at Connors excitingly. Did you crack the serum? Kind of. I introduced a new variable. What variable? Peter saw the half-empty blood vial with a label that said Izuku M. Connors, you didn't. Connor gets up and paces around a bit. Look, this wasn't my original intention. I was looking at the boy's blood, just making sure there was nothing out of the ordinary and looking for traces of the X gene. But when there was none, then I noticed something. The boy's blood is different. Connors pulls up a screen. On it is a bunch of blood cells. These are the boy's blood cells, untainted. On the screen were blood cells that were moving around. Now here is some of the lizard serum. Now usually the serum diffuses and attacks the cells, causing the mutation to happen. But the boy's blood is different. Connors put lizard serum on the blood slide. What Peter saw next astonished him. The blood screens were attacking the mutagens, conglomerating around it. The boy's blood is attacking the mutagens and making them their own. It makes it compatible with itself. It's as if the boy's blood, no, the boy's DNA is primed for mutation, it's just missing a catalyst. Peter looked at the screen astonished. If this is how his blood reacts to mutagens, how does it react to viruses, bacteria, and cancer cells, for God's sake? Breakthroughs not thought possible in the next 100 years, a universal cure, and that boy is the key to it all. Akio was walking to the ladies' bathroom while watching her surroundings. She entered and Elle locked the door behind her. She walked around checking under each stall to make sure no one else was around. Once she confirmed her surroundings were clear, she pulled out a compact mirror and pressed a button hidden on the side. Agent Akio reporting from Parker Industries. There was static for a second, then a voice came on over the compact. Ah, Agent Akio, I take it you're here to report on the Parker Industries Hadron Collider progress. Actually, I have some more interesting to report. The person on the side of the comlink sounded annoyed. Agent Akio, our organization does not care what you believe is interesting. We gave you an assignment and we expect you to report on it. Akio seemed to be exasperated, but then said something that shut up the man on the comlink. What if I said I found the perfect lab rat? The man on the line went silent. What have you found, Agent Akio? Akio smirked. Let's just say I found the perfect specimen to experiment on. Someone Zola would have great interest in. The comlink went silent for a while. All right, Agent Akio, send over the information you have pertaining to this lab rat, as you called it, and we will decide if it's worth pursuing. Akio smiled. Agent Akio singeing off when one head cut off. The man on the line responded, May 2 grow in its place. They then said in unison, Hail Hydra. Akio closed her compact and grinned. She had a lot of work to do to secure this little lab rat. Alternate Japan. Have you seen my son? Inko was out on the streets putting up missing posters of Izuku and asking around. It had been 3 days since he had gone missing, and she didn't feel comfortable sitting around just waiting to hear from the police. Mitsuki had been there to help earlier, but since it was already starting to get late, she had gone home. Before she left, she had Inko promise that she would stop in an hour and head home to rest. That had been 3 hours ago. She felt fine, she could rest later. Right now her babe was out there and she was going to find him. She saw a thin man carrying groceries and approached him. Mister, have you seen this boy? Inko showed the blonde man a missing poster. The man looked at the poster and seemed to recognize the kid on it. No, sorry, I haven't. Inko looked even more downtrodden. Oh, that's okay, sorry to bother you, mister. Toshinori Yagi, answered the man. Have you tried contacting the police? Inko nods. It's the first thing I did. They alerted me that there has been a spike in quirkless people who have gone missing. Toshi listened carefully. How long has he been missing? Inko tried to compose herself so she wouldn't cry in front of a stranger. About 3 days ago. Toshi's eyes widened when he heard that. Well, I hope you find him. Inko saw Toshi zoom off. While at least he took the time to listen. I can go another hour, then I'll hit up the library. Toshi rounded off into an alleyway and transformed in his all-might form. He called Naomasa. Toshi, what do I owe the honor to for this phone call? Toshi didn't even stifle a laugh. Do you have a missing person case on an Izuku Midoriya? Naomasa sounded surprised. Yeah, we grouped him up with a group of other quirkless individuals that have gone missing. Why? Toshi sounded concerned. I saw the kid. Naomasa sounded excited. Toshi sighed. 3 days ago. Toshi had felt bad ever since he gave that kid that advice. After he had saved some sassy blonde kid from the slime villain that had escaped earlier. He had met Night Eye and his protege, which All Might had thought was perfect to inherit One for All. After he had passed over One for All to young Mirio, All Might and Night Eye conversed for the first time ages. At one point All Might had brought up why he was late and the advice he had given to Izuku, and Night Eye's face immediately went sour as if the past 3 hours they had spent talking fixing their severed friendship had disappeared. Night Eye at least didn't have to speed too long on explaining how he was an idiot. After that, Toshi searched around a bit to see if he could find young Midoriya to have a different talk with him, to tell him that even though he was quirkless, not give up. But now he finds out that the boy had disappeared the day he told him to give up and weighed heavily on All Might. Steve Rogers was at Stark Industries getting his shield's paint redone after his latest excursion. He had taken out a hijack tank, but not before it shot a sabot round at him. The shield had taken most of the impact, but that doesn't mean that the shield had gotten out unscathed. So here he was getting it all prettied up for their next date, because if there was anyone who could work with his shield, it was the son of the man who helped create it. Stark walked out in casual wear and an arc reactor shining from his chest. You know, I can do a lot more than paint that shield. I could give a nice revamp. I even made advancement on the hard light projector. I could make you a Captain America iron suit. I promise I'll make it look better than Rhodey's Iron Patriot suit. Steve nodded no. I'm good, but if you could repair my suit, I would be grateful. Tony got up. Not that I can't, but if you want it done right, I would ask Parker. He sent me a new carbine nanotube Kevlar mix fabric put together with artificial spider silk. I gotta admit, when it comes to fabric, kids got me beat. Steve got up. Parker, you would think that with the side work he wouldn't have time to know science around. Tony looks at Steve. Did you just say science around? Steve looked down. Look, I went to art school, okay? Anyways, you think Parker will see me? I heard that it's hard to get a hold of him sometimes, especially when he gets SCKED into working on new projects. Stark leaned against a counter. Well, if you like, you could tag along. I'm heading over there in a bit. Parker and I have been working on a little joint venture and I haven't gotten an update on its progress in 4 days. Steve looks genuinely interested. What type of joint venture? Tony pops a blueberry in his mouth that he got from God knows where. We worked on a new and improved particle accelerator. He provides the space underneath the Baxter building as well as his expertise, while I provide the power and a part of the power. Steve nods his head. Okay. Tony looks at Steve. Where did I lose you? Particle accelerator. Tony shakes his head. All right, it doesn't matter. I'm visiting him in a bit. Want to come with? Steve stands up. Then let us get going. Tony stopped him. I said in a bit. I haven't gotten to eat breakfast yet. Izuku was sitting in the lobby of Parker Industries. Mr. Parker said, writing information down about the mysterious hero that saved him. There was a drawing on the left-hand side and a note on the right side. Name Spider-Man. Height 5'8" - 6 foot. Abilities, tether from hand-wrist? The rest of the page was empty. Izuku wondered why he hadn't heard of Spider-Man in Japan. Considering that there were plenty of magazines with Spider-Man on them, it's actually how he had figured out the name. Most of them had good things to say except the Daily Bugle, which was to say nicely an exception. This is also where he learned that apparently, Parker Industries provides tech and support, which would explain why Spider-Man was at the Collider and why he had been treated at Parker Industries and not a hospital. He still did wonder how he had gotten here. His leading theory is that someone that he hadn't seen misfired a teleportation quirk, and instead of taking him to a random location, the energy that the Hadron Collider acted as an anchor point. He had read some research files that great energy signatures could mess with teleportation quirks, but never once had he read of transcontinental travel. Izuku would theorize later he put his notebook into a new backpack that Parker had given him. His old one had been torn when he was saved by Spider-Man. Apparently when the tether had stopped his fall, the first one had been aimed at his backpack and the strap wasn't able to support his body weight and ripped, but Izuku was more than happy with its replacement. Mr. Parker had said that it was made of a new textile that they had developed that with normal wear and that it should be considered indestructible, that if his new backpack was empty, it could stop a .44 Magnum point blank. Izuku thought he was kidding, but Mr. Parker didn't laugh. Izuku wondered how much it would cost. When suddenly he got snapped out of it when a supercar pulled up to the front of Parker Industries. A businessman with a suit on stepped out of one door and out the other was what Izuku thought a ruggedly handsome blonde man who was carrying a shield on his back stepped out the other. They started to walk towards the receptionist while Izuku was watching them. Izuku could feel the charisma emanating off the businessman but also something approachable about him. While from the blonde man he felt similar to when he would watch videos of All Might, a type of energy that could inspire people to better themselves. The businessman spoke while smiling at the silver-haired lady. Mr. Rogers and I are here to see Mr. Parker. Is he in today, and are you available afterward for a date, Tony? The lady looked at the man and smiled. Honestly, I am more interested in Mr. Rogers asking me on a date. Steve tried to hide his small amount of blush forming on his cheeks. The lady continued speaking. Mr. Parker doesn't have any appointments for today. Tony looked at the silver-haired lady. Just tell him I'm here and that Rogers also wants something from him. She pushed a button and after a while spoke. Mr. Parker will see you now. Just climb into the elevator and it should take straight to the genetics lab. Tony and Steve headed into the elevator. Izuku then spoke up. Who are they, Felicia? Felicia looked at Izuku. No one, just someone who is here to see Mr. Parker. Izuku smiled. Okay, I'm going to the cafeteria if anyone comes to look for me. Izuku walked toward the cafeteria. How is that kid so cute? Felicia grinned and went back to work. Tony and Steve walked off the elevator and towards the main lab. There they saw whiteboard upon whiteboard filled with writing. Stark looked at it astounded. Well, what have we got here? Peter came out from behind one of the whiteboards looking disheveled as if he hadn't had sleep for a whole day. Peter didn't even look at them and instead looked at the board in front of him. Tony spoke up. Peter. Peter turned to look at them. Who? Oh, Tony, what are you doing here? Tony looked around at the notes splayed around everywhere. Well, Cap wanted to ask about that new material you were working on. Cap? Peter turns and barely notices Steve's presence. Sorry, didn't notice you there. As you can see, you. There. New material? Ah yes, the Kevlar carbine compound. If you just go back into that elevator and it should take you to the textile floor. Tell Amadeus to take your measurements. There should be some leftover from earlier. Steve left back towards the elevator and got in. So, I came by because I noticed your power bill was lower these last few days. So, I thought that perhaps something had gone wrong with it, but it looks like you've been busy. What have you been working on? Peter looks at Tony. Something world-changing. Logan had been traveling from Quebec to Manhattan for the past 8 hours. The perks of being a mutant were that you didn't have to sleep or eat as much, but that didn't mean he didn't get hungry when he got to Parker Industries. He was going to raid their cafeteria. Logan arrived outside the building and parked his motorcycle behind some rich a-hole supercar. He entered the building and saw a pretty silvered-hair receptionist. Excuse me, Mr. Parker was expecting me. Can you tell him I'm here? Felicia looked at Logan then pressed a button. Mr. Parker, someone is here to see you. Logan looked around the lobby. Tell him Xavier sent me and that when he's ready for me he can find me in the cafeteria. Logan started walking towards the cafeteria without waiting for approval. Logan looked down at his cafeteria tray and saw a burger with the works on it and a beer on the side. Logan was never the biggest fan of the inventor type, but if Parker was the type to let his employees have a drink on the job, perhaps this one wasn't so bad. He looked around the bustling cafeteria for a place to sit down when he saw a spot at a two-person table. There was already a kid sitting in one of the chairs. I hope this guy enjoys company. If not, neither do I, so we will already have something in common. He sat down in front of the green-haired kid. The kid didn't seem to mind and even moved some of his things out of the way and grinned at him. Humph, nice kid. Logan sat down and was about to take a bite out of his burger when the boy shifted and Logan got a quick view of his chest and saw clear signs of abuse. This was probably the kid he was here to meet. Logan didn't know how to initiate the conversation, so he decided to just be direct. Mu no aza enaitsut hanashitaidasu ka. Do you want to talk about those bruises on your chest? The boy looked up at Logan, surprised, and subconsciously rubbed his chest. Stark looked at Peter. What do you mean world-changing? Peter sat down at the computer and pulled up a simulation. Imagine a blood cell that could incorporate a mutagen into its system instead of being corrupted by it, holding these mutations in its code till needed, even showing these mutations to its fellow cells and allowing them to copy. Stark looked at Peter. Well, at that point you just have someone who is highly susceptible to mutations, a perfect genuine pig, but not much else. Except that when these blood cells are in a different body, they decide to exhibit their mutations temporarily before destroying them and becoming simple blood cells. It's as if the blood cells have a type of energy that's expended once the mutation is used. Stark is fully engaged in the conversation. What's the energy? Peter shakes his head. Unknown, but we did figure out that the energy is only expended once it uses the mutation and is out of the original patient's body. Stark moves some paper over and sits down on the desk. So, what you're saying is you more or less have a way to let someone exhibit a mutation for a limited amount of time, but wouldn't that mean you would lose any benefit those mutations gave you? Peter started the simulation. That's the interesting part, it chose what to let the body keep and what not to keep. With Connor serum it allowed the rat to regrow its arm, but once the arm had been restored it destroyed the mutations. Stark looked at Peter with curiosity. Can it destroy pre-existing mutations? Could, let's say, religious groups use it to wipe out the X gene? Peter shook his head. No, when we injected it into a rat that Connors had infected with pure mutagen nothing changed. It's as if the blood was sentient. The phone rang. Mr. Parker, someone came in who said they were sent by Xavier and that they would wait in the cafeteria when you're ready to speak to them. Peter makes a mental note. Were we? Ah yes, sentient blood. It's blood that is ready to mutate as long as it has a catalyst can display those mutations outside of the original host, but only for a certain amount of time, and that is not even the best part. Peter pulls up a separate simulation. When I said mutations, I meant all mutations, which is what happened when we put a sample of leukemia-infected blood. On the screen were red blood cells attacking the cancerous white blood cells immediately. It's hundreds of times faster than standard blood at destroying cancer cells, not just blood, either brain, skin, lung. I've tested 100 types of cancers and this blood was extremely efficient at fighting them, as if that DNA had been fighting far more advanced cancer. As a matter of fact, the only one it had trouble on was one that we mutated from the original batch. The best part is this effect might be permanent, it hasn't slowed down as it has with the mutagens. Stark looked at Peter. So, what you're saying is you just developed a cure for most forms of cancer? Peter nodded. No, it was donated to me. Stark was genuinely shocked. Peter got up and grabbed the empty blood vial. The blood wasn't modified, it's natural. Tony asked what would be his final question. Who did you get it from? Tony Stark was handed the empty vial with a name tag. That tag read Izuku Midoriya. Izuku was shocked. For more than one reason. He was shocked that someone had decided to join him to eat, surprised that the Caucasian man was speaking fluent Japanese, but most of all he was surprised at what the man had said. Izuku always tried to hide his marks from people, while mostly his mom and aunt. The school had never said anything, no matter how many times Izuku got to class with a new bruise or mark on his chest. Even when he would come in with a new black eye, the teachers acted negligently. Izuku would just make an excuse to his mom, saying that he had tripped or that he fell, but he could tell that she never truly believed him. But ever since he was 5 it seemed that they had grown apart, so she wouldn't push him on it and he wouldn't either. Now this man that he didn't even know was asking him about them. The man spoke up. If you don't want to talk about them, it's fine, you don't have to. But from experience, I can tell you that it helps if you talk about it. The man extended his hand. Name's Logan. Izuku didn't know why, but he took the man's hand and shook it. Izuku. Logan nodded and took a bite of his burger, then swallowed it. So do you want to talk about it, or is it a touchy subject? Izuku thought for a moment. No, it's fine, it's just no one has ever asked about the theme. My teachers always pretended they weren't there and I would always try to hide them from my mom. After all, if no one says something it might just be that I am the problem. Logan tried to keep his composure. So where did you get them from? Izuku rubs his chest. Just a friend. Izuku said, as if trying to convince himself. Logan organized his thoughts. Okay, so it's not child abuse, which is good. But his classmates and teacher. Xavier would have a field day with a school that allows this type of abuse to happen to one of their students. Maybe we could convince his mother to have him board at Xavier's school so he can grow at a place that's safe for him. But what if he doesn't want to go? Logan looks at Izuku and notices him writing something in a notebook. What are you writing? Izuku scribbles furiously in his notebook. Just updating my hero notebook. Logan's eyes widened. You like heroes? Izuku nods yes. Logan smiled. He had found his in. Maybe if Logan couldn't convince the kid to join Xavier's school, the Wolverine could. Logan got up, started heading towards his bike, and got a metal suitcase. He walked back to the table where the kid was. I'll be back in a bit to wait here. Izuku smiled. Okay. Steve had gotten his measurements taken and was headed back to the elevator when something caught his attention. He saw a woman with chopsticks in her hair, looking like she didn't want to be followed. Some might call Steve paranoid, but Steve trusted his gut, they were usually right. He followed the girls from far enough away not to arouse her suspicion. She turned a corner, Steve following closely behind. After Steve wandered the corner, the woman was nowhere to be seen. He heard someone talk behind him. You know, following a lady like that, someone might think you're a stalker. Steve turned around and there she was, the lady with chopsticks in her hair. Well, when a woman walks around looking like she has something to hide, a man might get curious. The woman walked up closely to Steve Rogers. What would Captain America want with a little intern like me? The intern started walking away when there was a noise that sounded like radio static. Agent Akio, come in, is the package ready for extraction? Akio sighed and took out her compact, then pressed a button. Affirmative, package is on the first floor near exit 3. Smash through the glass window and strike fast. I've been compromised and will stall. This will be my final transmission. The other voice went silent, then answered. Affirmative. Akio took her radio and smashed it in half and looked at Rogers. You know, my great-grandfather fought in World War II. He was supposed to have a hero's welcome, only to find out that my grandmother had died at a Japanese internment camp, and my mother, his daughter that he wasn't able to see being born, was being abused at an orphanage. At that moment he decided that he didn't care what evil he had to do, he would work to see America fall. It's been a family tradition ever since. Steve was about to say something when a metal needle flew by his face, cutting it a bit, and stuck itself into the wall beside him. He looked at Akio with half of her hair down and one of the 2 chopsticks missing. You'll be surprised what you can get past security when you claim cultural injustice. Even got an old security guy fired for cultural insensitivity. Akio grabs the other chopstick in her hair, letting her hair hang loose. She twirled the metal stick in her hand and lunged forward. Steve forced the hand off target. Only for Akio to use her momentum to stab Roger lightly, yet enough to draw blood and jump back before he could retaliate. Akio looked at her needle with pride. If my grandfather could just know that I wounded Captain America, he would be so proud. She tried to lunge again, but this time Steve knew what she was trying to do and pinned her to the wall. What are you doing at Parker Industries? What is the package? Akio twisted out of the pin and stabbed Steve in the shoulder, burying the metal needle as far as it would go, and tried to run. Steve finally got out his shield and threw it at Akio. It knocks her to the floor and the shield bounded back towards Steve. He made her face him and grabbed her by her lab coat. Now talk. Who do you work for and what do they want in the Parker industry? Does it have to do something with the collider? Akio just looked at Steve and laughed. She shifted something in her mouth and she bit down. It's too late, Captain America. Cut off one head and 2 more shall grow in its place. Hail Hydra. Akio convulsed for a couple of seconds, then died with a grin on her face. Steve got up and pulled the needle from his arm. Then all of a sudden, the building rattled and the lights flickered. An explosion had just gone off somewhere. 10 minutes earlier. Tony looked at Peter. So, this kid fell out of nowhere? Peter nodded. I assumed because of the green hair he was a mutant and might have accidentally activated his power running from danger. Stark's eyes widened. What danger? Peter pulled up an X-ray. When we did his checkup, we found multiple bruises and hairline fractures on his chest and ribcage. So, we thought he might be a runaway mutant. Tony nodded and touched his arc reactor unconsciously. Not a bad theory, but can I put forward something else? It came to mind when you showed me the kid's phone. Tony pulled out his phone and pulled up the power that the arc reactor at Stark Industries had been providing the last few days. Tony speaks up. We had a power surge the other day when one of the 5 arc reactors we had blown. But the funny thing is we don't know where that power went. Tony looked around the lab. Do you have an ion detector? Peter leaves and comes back with one. Thank you. Tony plugged in the machine and tossed one of the kid's pencils in it. Are you trying to catch the ionization on the graphite? Tony shook his head. Just confirming something. Jarvis, can you get me CMB charts and compare them to the CMB of the pencil? A couple of minutes later the results showed on screen and Tony was astonished. Parker, I thought you pulled a kid out of the future, but this kid is not even in the right universe. Not only is the CMB much weaker than any other object, but it doesn't even match. So, you not only brought a kid from the future into the past, but the past of a universe he didn't even originate from. Or more likely their universe runs at the same time as ours, just parallel, but you did pull someone from the multiverse. Realization hit Parker's face. And no wonder he could contact his guardian, they're not even in this plane of existence. It would also explain why his blood was better at dealing with our modern cancers to his blood cells. They're 120 years behind if the date on the kid's phone is to be trusted. But what about the kid's ability to display more than one mutation? Tony thought for a second, then something clicked. The kid's hero journal that you showed me scans off what if mutations are common in his world as well too. They were about to get up when Peter's spider sense tingled, and a second later the alarms went off. Peter took off his shirt, revealing his costume underneath. Tony taped his arc reactor twice, activating the suit hidden within. Peter put on his mask and asked the building AI. What happened to the collider? The AI spoke. There seems to be no damage to the collider, counting 2 armored vehicles and 20 armored men in the cafeteria. What could they want in the cafeteria? Tony revived a call from Steve. Rogers, what up? Steve was making his way down in the elevator. Tell Parker a Hydra agent was posing as an intern. Stark spoke. Wait, I'll put you on speaker. From what I could find, she's been accessing a bunch of medical files, and the last message she sent was that the package was in the cafeteria. Something about a perfect lab rat. Peter had a realization that he hoped wasn't true. Computer, where was Izuku Midoriya last seen? The AI sounded off. The person Izuku Midoriya's last known location is the cafeteria. Peter started running towards the nearest window. Christ, they're after the kid, Steve called out over the call. What kid? Tony answered him. Cap, imagine a kid that can hold a mutagen or X gene almost perfectly and what Hydra could do with it. Now a kid like that is in the cafeteria and it seems Hydra is here to get him. Steve would ask why a kid like that was a Parker Industry later. Right now, the life and freedom of a teenager were on the line, so he just had one question. What's the kid look like? Peter answered immediately, he has green hair. Steve realized he had seen the kid earlier. He also realized that the elevator was too slow and he broke through the glass window and slid down the cable instead. Logan had just finished changing into his X-Men costume when he heard the explosion go off. He ran out of the changing room and ran back to the cafeteria. There he saw 2 armored trucks and 20 armed soldiers. He listened to what they were saying. Remember, the kid's hair color is green, get him as fast as possible. Logan realized that they were talking about the kid. If they're doing a daytime raid to get him, the kid's mutation must be powerful. He looked around and saw Izuku hiding behind a table. Then the raiders started opening fire on anyone they saw who didn't have green hair. Logan ran at the first armed raider and popped his claws 3 on each hand as he approached. The armed raider hadn't even had time to react when he had a metal claw piercing his face as he went limp, staining Wolverine's black and yellow costume with blood. Wolverine spent no more time on the second one, just as fast. The armed raider was about to point his gun at Logan when Logan slashed at his wrist, detaching it from its arm as if it were butter, causing the raider to drop his gun. The others finally noticed their predicament and one of the raiders yelled, "It's the Wolverine." Logan closed the distance onto 2 more guards, impaling them both in the chest. Then someone inside the armored car that hadn't shown their face with a German accent yelled, "Get the carbonium RPG head." Logan dispatched 1 more raider. He felt his battle senses start to increase as it felt like his claws were getting warmer. As he turned to see a man with an RPG pointed at him. Afu, the blast sent him flying, landing heavily 20 feet away. Izuku had only read about heroes being this violent if they were underground heroes or vigilantes. But they usually wore much darker colors. And now he saw that hero, dead on the floor with his chest blown out, and his gut hanging out. This was a lot more gore than Izuku had ever seen, and it was making him slightly queasy. There were still a lot of people hiding behind tables hoping not to be seen. All of a sudden one of the raiders got up on a table and yelled, "We are looking for an Izuku Midoriya. If you come out, we promise we will let the rest of these people live." Izuku looked and saw some dead bodies on the floor and then looked at the other people scared out of their minds. Izuku spoke up, still keeping hidden. "I need your word that you'll let them live." The hidden man with the German accent spoke again. "You have my word." Izuku put his hands up and stepped out from behind cover. Izuku tried to leave the backpack behind so they wouldn't have the new material. "Bring the backpack as well, boy." Izuku put his backpack on and walked slowly towards the armored car. He stepped inside and saw no one else. The door shut down and the car started to move away. "You may open fire." Izuku was about to yell when something hit him, knocking him unconscious. The raider was aiming towards another employee when his gun was yanked from his hand with a web. Peter swung forward and kicked the unarmed Hydra agent. Another one of the agents tried to shoot Peter. But Peter's spider sense activates and he weaves his way through the gunfire. Then slingshot himself forward with his webs, knocking out 2 more Hydra agents. He sees one of his employees with a bullet hole in their leg and goes to treat them. He applies a tourniquet made of web. All of a sudden his spider senses activate and he sees a Hydra soldier aiming towards him. Bam! A shield hits the soldier in the face. The shield bounced around and went back into the hand that cast it. Steve nodded at Spider-Man and went forward. One of the armored verticals tried aiming its top-mounted turret at the 2. They were about to move when a comically small rocket hit the armored car. Then the armored car blew up in a controlled explosion. They turn and see Tony standing there in his armor. "Where are the other 10? Tony asked. Peter looked at him, being handled by security turrets in the field. Cap looked at them. "Where are the other 10? Peter pulled up the security video on his visor and scrolled the theme as fast as possible. He sent that same video feed to Tony so he could help look. Peter answered, "It seems that 5 of them got taken out by security and the other 5 retreated into the city. The rest, well, they seem to be strewn around in multiple places." Steve nodded. "Can you get a beat on the other armored vehicle?" Tony answered, "Well, considering that they probably want to get airborne as fast as possible and the Queens Midtown Tunnel, as well as Williamsburg, is closed for construction. They're probably rushing down 5th Avenue. Peter spoke up, "If we cut through the city we can cut them off at the bridge." Cap agreed. Tony, alert the police, tell them to set up a blockade at the end of the Manhattan Bridge and to block off the Brooklyn Bridge in case they try to weasel their way out. Spider-Man, try to find the 5 that escaped into the city. Peter got angry at those words. Cap, that kid is my responsibility. I can't just abandon him and find 5 goons. Cap stared at Peter. Spider-Man, no one knows these alleys better than you. If those agents are out, their lives could be at risk and you have the best chance of finding them. I promise I'll get the kid back. Come on, Tony, give me a lift. Tony flew off into the air carrying Cap. Peter just said one thing, I'll hold you to that, Cap, then webbed the nearest building and began his search. Izuku was sitting in the back of an armored vehicle that seemed empty except for what seemed like a robotic mannequin. The cabin looked to be separate from the driver's cabin. Izuku tried to sneak close to the door. Maybe if he opened it he could roll out. The pain from hitting the asphalt would probably hurt less than what he experienced from Katsuki, especially if he used his backpack as a shield to cushion himself from the brunt of the fall. He was about to reach out for the door when a voice with a German accent spoke up. I suggest you don't do that, boy. Izuku looked around surprised, maybe he imagined it and was reaching out for the door. When a metal fist went by his face, barely missing his face and smashing his hand. Izuku felt the pain surge through his body, stifling a yell as his bones were broken. He turned and saw the metallic-looking mannequin standing, cleaning the blood off of its fist. I suggest you sit, boy, and by the time this trip is over I promise you'll have both your legs. The mannequin that Izuku now realized was an android gestured to the seat in front of him. Who are you? Deku struggled to say through the pain as he sat down. Sure, he had gotten it stepped on by Katsuki before, but it had never broken this bad. The android faced him and suddenly a screen of light could be seen. Surprisingly, it wasn't the face that was smooth and featureless, instead the screen shone from the abdomen. On the screen, a face appeared. The name is Arnim Zola, a pleasure I'm sure. Izuku had no idea who this man. Android, AI was, but he seemed self-important. The face on the screen looked normal and Izuku could make out a pair of thin frame glasses. What do you want with me? I'm just a useless kid, Izuku said in a self-deprecating. Zola looks at Izuku. You know, I thought that about you too until Agent Akio sent over your information. Izuku was concerned. The intern is one of your agents? Was one of our agents. She no longer had anything to offer. The android shifts its seat to get a better line of sight on Izuku. As I was saying, I was included to agree with your former statement. Why would Hydra have to need a kid? But then I saw your medical charts. With your mutation, we could have an army of enhanced soldiers. Our medical bay will advance by years, not to mention our espionage. We could find someone with a transformation mutation and make it temporary. The biology of your body is amazing. Your life will be forfeit so Hydra can thrive. So if anyone was to truly call you useless after learning that, then they would be an idiot. Izuku processed what he just heard. Had the man lied to him about him having a mutation? It's probably the English word for quirk, and he swore he remembers the doctor saying he didn't have one. It had been the cause of the split between him and his mother after all. The android in front of him would have no real reason to lie. Maybe he had a quirk that could only manifest itself if he got a separate quirk somehow given to him. It would be amazing if I could somehow get a quirk. But sadly that's impossible. His quirk was just like him, useless. Then he thought a second longer. Maybe these people have a way of extracting and gifting quirks. I'm glad there's no one like that back in Japan. If it wasn't for the insinuation that he was going to die, Izuku would be happy right now. Cap and Tony were above the Manhattan Bridge flying towards their target, an armored truck, and were about to engage it when the energy turret on top of it shot at Tony. Inside the armored vehicle, Zola yelled. Fire at the hangars. The turret powered up again, hitting the support hangar, causing it to snap. The bridge started to stain and creak as one of the main support hangars was torn. Tony dropped Cap. You go get the kid. I'll try to stop the bridge from collapsing, or at least slow it down so everyone can evacuate. Tony flew towards the torn support hangar and grabbed it, keeping the bridge up using his repulsors at full blast. Cap started weaving his way through the cars, helping people up and evacuating the bridge until he saw the armored vehicle. The energy weapon started to charge up again when Steve threw his shield, jamming it into the energy turret, causing it to fire and rebound the energy back at itself and disabling it. Steve approached the back of the armored vehicle and was about to open the back door when the door burst open and launched Steve back. 7 minutes earlier. Izuku was listening to the commotion outside of the vehicle. Suddenly he felt the tuck shift a bit. He held tight onto his backpack. He looked at the android and noticed it wasn't moving, as if it was expecting the vibrations. All of a sudden Izuku heard an explosion overhead and felt lucky that it had not affected the cabin. Suddenly the android stood up and walked close to the door and swung his fist forward, bursting the door open with force. Even though he was in America, he still hoped it was all might. Captain America, be it the war or modern day, you have to interfere with Hydra's business as if it was in your DNA. Zola swung forward with his heavy fist. Steve dodged and tried to hit back. The metal was solid and didn't even make noise when he struck it. Zola, I thought you blew yourself up. Zola made a noise that could be misconstrued as laughter. Just for the namesake of my organization, I have more than one head captain. Attempts to slam down on Steve. Cap dodges a slam from Zola running and uses him as a springboard to end up on top of the armored vehicle and pulled his shield out of the destroyed turret. He tightens it on his wrist and jumps down, striking the android in the head with the shield, making it stager. Zola spoke up, that's not just for show. The head transforms into what looks like an optical camera, but the lens shines red and aims a beam at Steve. Stands his ground using the shield to block the beam and redirect it into the air. The intensity of the beam starts to push Steve back. Until Steve redirects the laser back at Zola, slicing the android's arm off and throwing it off balance. Steve charges the android with his shield, knocking it over. Steve doesn't give the android a second to breathe and stands over it, striking the head repeatedly until he decapitates it. Finally lifting the shield and slamming it into the chest, disabling the android. The android starts to power down. You may have defeated me today, but remember this, Captain. You cut off one head, another one takes its place. Hail Hydra. The android shuts down and lays on the floor, powered down. Steve stepped towards the armored vehicle and looked inside and saw it was empty, but Steve noticed on the side a kid with green hair hidden behind a car writing down notes. Izuku had just seen what he assumed to be an up-and-coming pro, and from so close. He had so many questions. What was his quick? What was his name, and what was that shield made of, or who made it? The costume color coordination looked good. His flexibility was also taken into consideration. The hero was walking up to him. Izuku fumbled through his backpack and looked for a pen. As soon as the man tried to speak, Izuku took the opportunity. Izuku held out his notebook with the pen. Can I have your autograph? Steve looked at the kid strangely. Sure. Cap took the notebook from the kid and saw the kid's black and white drawing of him, and signed it. For just having seen him in costume during the fight, the kid's drawing wasn't bad. Are you okay, kid? Cap handed the notebook back to the kid. Izuku looked at the towering man in front of him. He didn't know why, but when he looked at the man he felt respect towards him. Yes, sir. Steve looked at the kid strangely. Sir? Izuku shuffled his feet. I heard the villain call you Captain. Just call me Steve. Are you sure you're alright, and what's your name? Steve noticed his hand. Your hand looks purple. Izuku looks at his broken hand. I'm Izuku and I've dealt with worse than this. Izuku told Steve to try to convince himself more than Steve. Steve shook his head. Let's get you some medical attention, come on, kid. Steve looked at Tony welding the bridge cable back together. He seemed just about done, and it seemed this excursion had gone off with minimal damage and the kid relatively unharmed. Eric Saltz was just one of many Hydra members that had taken part in this mission. The rest of his squad had gotten captured by damn Spider-Man. Now he was on top of one Manhattan Square, aiming at Captain America through the scope of a high-powered rifle. If they couldn't fulfill the mission objective, then at least he could be the Hydra agent that killed Captain America. He was about to pull the trigger when a web stuck to the gun. He pulled the trigger to get the shot off. Bam! The shot rang out as he was knocked out by one of Peter's punches. A few seconds earlier, Zola had rerouted emergency power to the movement. Sure, he wouldn't have enough power for his backup drive, but the master copy was still out there. So it was worth the sacrifice. Zola dragged himself towards the armored vehicle. He reached inside the mini armory that was inside and grabbed a carbonadium grenade that they had packed because they had heard the Wolverine was going to be in attendance. Zola pulled the pin and with the last of his battery threw the grenade. Auf Wiedersehen, dear Captain. The robot had completely shut down. Steve had made it to a crowd of people with the kid in tow. Some kids were asking for an autograph. Bam! Steve had gotten shot in the shoulder. He pushed the kid over in case the gunman fired a second shot. The crowd tried to disperse, but panic had set in, causing mayhem. He wasn't sure where the shot had come from, but then he heard something metallic land nearby. There just ahead of him a grenade landed near a woman and her child. Where he wouldn't be able to reach his shield in time, he would try to jump and take the brunt of the explosion. He was about to leap when he saw a flash of green hair run by. It was the kid. Steve was wondering what the kid was doing when he saw him jump onto the grenade using his backpack as some sort of buffer. He was about to try and grab the kid when... boom! The next few seconds were in slow motion for Steve. He wasn't sure if it was from the sound of the grenade or what he had just witnessed. The kid had jumped on top of the grenade and Steve swore he heard the kid say, "Get away, get back." The kid had been launched back with the explosion and was knocked back into a car. Steve ran up to him. His hands and legs were blown off. He had a puncture wound in the neck. The shirt he was wearing was destroyed. His entire chest was purple and you could see little shrapnel puncture wounds. His ears were bleeding. He was losing a lot of blood. Steve put a hand on the puncture on his neck. "Why did you do that, kid?" Izuku looked past Steve at the mother kissing her son on the forehead. Steve saw what he was looking at. Izuku tried to speak but his mouth was filled with blood. He was starting to feel cold and he was losing focus. "I just wanted to help them." Izuku knew what was happening to him. He had hoped maybe the backpack would absorb more of the blast but he knew the risk. His consciousness was fading but Izuku had one last thought. "I finally got to be a hero, Mom. Sorry, I won't be able to come home and tell you about it." He closed his eyes and everything went black. Back in alternate Japan. Inko was passed out with dark circles under her eyes. Then suddenly she was woken up by what felt like thunder running from her system. She didn't know where her baby was but she knew something had happened to him. All of a sudden there was a knock on her door. She opened it and saw Detective Naomasa standing there with a man with what looked like a scarf wrapped around him. Inko felt hope that maybe they had news about her son. Maybe he was at the hospital waiting to see her right now. But then she saw the look on their faces. "Miss, you might want to sit down for this," said Naomasa. Inko took a seat and listened intently. "We found traces of the kidnapper's ring. We were able to shut down the one where we theorize your son was located. Unfortunately, when we questioned the smugglers we arrested they said that any teens they had were sent off yesterday. But that none of them were alive. We're sorry for your loss." Inko's heart shattered and she fell to her knees. Tears ran down her face as she processed what she heard. Her baby, her one and only son, was not missing but gone. She would never see that smile again. She would never be kept up by him obsessing over a new hero. She would not even be able to bury his body in a proper funeral. Then she got angry. "My baby is gone because you didn't do your job. You let a kidnapping ring go unnoticed until a victim came forward asking about her already missing son. Now he's gone because of you." Inko stood up. "All my boy wanted to do was help people. He was a sharp student and now he's dead." All the silverware in the room started to lift, then the lamps, and then even the couch were all being affected by her quirk. Then the man with the scarf stared at her and it all came crashing down. Inko fell to her knees again and sobbed uncontrollably. "Just get out, I want to be alone." The detective and the scruffy-haired man walked out. Outside the door was All Might wearing a big frown. Then Shota spoke up. "You're going to have to tell her your part in this eventually." "I know." The three men walked away from the house where continued sobbing could be heard. Steve called out. "Stark, get over here, it's an emergency." Stark came down having finished welding the bridge cable back together. He looked in horror at what he saw. The kid that Parker had told them to bring back in one piece was in dire condition. Both arms and legs were missing. His breathing was slowing down. While Cap had a gunshot wound through his shoulder. What the hell happened? After the gunshot rang out, a grenade was launched from the south. Before I had the time to react, the kid jumped on it. Tony looked at the kid. Jarvis, do a preliminary scan. A blue laser scan went up and down Izuku's body. Then Jarvis spoke. Initial scans indicate traumatic brain injury, spine fractures, amputation, facial trauma, acoustic trauma, crush injury, concussion, broken bone, jaw, broken or dislocated, skull fracture, cuts and puncture wounds, collapsed lung, myocardial contusion, burns, hypovolemic shock, subarachnoid hemorrhage, and subdural hematoma. Survivability chances after ICU treatment are 28% and dropping by the minute. Tony asked solemnly, "Any good news?" Jarvis thought for a second. "Well, considering his close approximation to the explosion, his hands and legs have been somewhat cauterized and it seems that none of the shrapnel has punctured anything of value. As long as the surgery is done quickly, getting him to a stable state should be possible. Not a completely saving him, but you could at least buy time." Tony nodded and looked at Steve. "Steve, hold on tight to the kid. I'm going to New York Presbyterian Hospital and I'll get the best surgeon they have. A Quinjet should be here shortly. They'll take you back to Parker Industries and put the kid in intensive care." "Why aren't we all going to the hospital?" Steve looked quizzically at Tony. "Parker has more advanced tools at Parker Industries than probably any local hospital." "Then why are you going to the hospital? What good is a tool without a good pair of hands?" Steve kneeled next to Izuku, trying to make him as comfortable as possible and applying pressure where needed. Tony's repulsors whirred as he took off. As soon as he left, you could see a Quinjet landing and a medical team getting off along with what appeared to be S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and lastly the most important S.H.I.E.L.D. agent of all, Nick Fury. The medical team took Izuku and carefully and quickly put him on a stretcher and started transporting him up the Quinjet ramp. Steve looked down at his hand covered with the blood of an innocent teenage boy and breathed out heavily. After Steve got up, he started walking to join Izuku in the Quinjet. Nick came up to talk to him. "Captain Rogers. Care to give me a moment of your time and inform me what's going on? Steve stared him straight in the eye. Aftermath of a failed Hydra kidnapping. Sadly, the main target was badly injured at the end of the rescue mission. Furry looked back at him. So why did Hydra want the kid enough for Zola to show up personally? Steve told him honestly, I don't know, all I know is that the kid's a mutant and that Peter found him in Parker Industries a couple of days ago. Furry looked surprised. At least it wasn't Stark for once. So did Hydra do that damage to the kid? Steve nodded his head. I wasn't fast enough to react to a grenade, the kid jumped on it without a second thought. Nick looked stunned and spoke up. Barely halfway through PBRTY and already more of a hero than most. Well, I won't keep you any longer. I and these agents will see if we can get any information. Stark called beforehand, so the Quinjet pilot has already been informed to take you straight to Parker Industry. Furry bid farewell and started heading towards the armored vehicle Zola had been in. Steve was heading towards the Quinjet when a woman showed up in front of him. It was the mother that had been shielded from the blast. My son wanted to thank that young man for saving us, but he's getting a checkup with the paramedics. So, he wants you to give this to his hero. It was a little badger stuffed animal. Steve looked at the woman. I'll make sure he gets it. Steve entered the Quinjet and quickly thereafter. Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. Tony arrived at the hospital, retracted his suit, and went to the reception desk. Can you get me in contact with Dr. Stephen Strange? The reaction was surprised to see Tony Stark in her lobby, but then answered quickly. I'm sorry, but Dr. Strange no longer accepts walk-ins, no exceptions. Stark looked at the lady and pleaded. Please, it's an emergency and he's the only one that I know that can probably save this kid's life. The receptionist looked at Tony. Wait, did you say, kid? How old? He's 14, 15, early teenage years. Why? You might be able to convince him. The nurse flagged down a male nurse. Yes, Ms. Jenkins. Brad takes Mr. Stark here to Stephen's room so they can talk. Brad looked at the nurse quickly. Are you sure about this? The last time I took someone to meet him? He put me on bedpan duty for 2 months. Just do it or I'll tell Tristan that you have a crush on Black Widow and that you have a pin-up of her in your locker? Brad looked exasperated. Alright, geez. Why do you gotta go straight for the jugular? I was just looking for a please. Brad, please take me. Stark to Dr. Strange. Brad motioned for Stark to follow him. Let's go before she ruins my relationship. Tony followed Brad. Don't worry, I have a pin-up of Natasha as well. They both entered the elevator and smiled. As the doors closed, Brad the button for the 3rd floor that said consultation, which looked slightly older, and next to it was a new one that said child hospice. The elevator dinged and they got off and started walking down the hallway. Tony looked up as they were walking down the hall and noticed 2 signs. One said consults and the other one said Christine and Ollivander Child Hospice Wing. They went and stopped at a door that had a do not disturb sticker on it. Well, here we are. Good luck. Brad rushed down the hall as fast as possible, hoping not to be seen. Tony opened the door and immediately his nose was assaulted with the smell of BO. There the desk was a disheveled man in a robe with unkempt hair and a scraggly beard. Sorry, we no longer do consultations or surgeries in this office without an appointment and my formal approval. Tony spoke up. I need someone skilled enough to operate on a shrapnel patient. Stephen looked up. Oh, Mr. Stark, surprised to see you here, but if you're here to buy my services, I'm afraid it's a wasted trip. Mr. Fisk already offered me 30 mil and I declined. I can't be bought. I'm sure there are plenty of other great surgeons out there that can take the shrapnel out of your chest. Now if you could close the door on your way out, it would be much appreciated. Stark sat down in the chair in front of the desk and felt that he sat on something sticky. He got a text from Peter that the kid was in a stable condition, but they would have to talk about something when they got there. 60 million. I'll offer you a minimum of 60 million for one surgery and 30 million for every consecutive surgery that's needed. This got Stevens' attention. He looked at Tony and as he stood, Steven secured his prosthetic leg and stood up. I told you I can't be bought. The last time I worked for money, I lost a lot more than a leg the last time I worked for money. Tony looked at Steven and noted a necklace around Strange's neck that had 2 rings on it. So if you would please get out. Strange opened the door and held it open for Stark. Before Stark got up, he spoke. The surgeries are not for me, it's for a kid. Steven closed the door and asked, how old? 14, maybe 15. 120 million. What? I'll do the surgery if you donate 120 million to that unfinished hospital wing, including renovating the hospital. You know, usually when people mention it's for a kid, they lower the price, not raise it. Not every child has a billionaire that is willing to spend 120 million on them. That hospital wing is supposed to help with that. Tony looked at Strange. 200 mil, but that includes any surgeries needed afterward. Strange nodded and said, "Deal, I'll grab my kit and head to the surgery room." Stark stood up, "Actually head for the roof, we're heading out to Parker Industry. They have a complete medical wing and will have anything you might need. Plus the kid's in a dire condition." They started walking towards the elevator and pressed the button to call the elevator. Steven asked, worried, "What do you mean dire? What happened to the kid that he got shrapnel anyways?" The TV in the hallway blared with a news report, "Breaking news. Good evening everyone, I'm Christine Everhart and today we have reports coming in of what could only be described as a failed terrorist attack. We go now to Chess Roberts, who is live on the scene." "Thank you, Christine. As you can see we are on the scene of the Brooklyn Bridge attack where the NYPD along with damage control has cordoned off the crime scene. Eyewitness reports suggest that there was an altercation between Hydra and Captain America, along with some help from Iron Man. Yet many people are saying that those were not the only heroes on the scene today. Many eyewitness reports suggest that there was someone on the scene that could only be considered a hero. Many are saying that a young boy jumped on a live grenade that was active in the middle of the crowd." Back to you, Christine. The screen image changes back to the newsroom. "Our best wishes go to the brave young boy and his family, and now sports." The elevator dings and Tony steps in as Strange looks at him in awe. Strange steps in and stands next to Tony and speaks up. "Is the kid on the news the one where, yup, one and the same?" A Strange thought for a bit, "I'll do the surgery for free. No can do document. I made a deal with you and I intend to keep it." "Why?" Strange asked. "Because you're right, not everyone out there has 200 million to drop on someone." Strange stepped in next to Tony and he pressed the button to take them to the top floor. And Strange said, "One last thing, you know you could have led with a kid has grenade shrapnel and I would have just agreed to come with you." The elevator door closed. 40 minutes earlier. Steve was on the Quinjet as they were landing on top of the Parker Building helicopter pad. Peter came out to the pad along with a bunch of medical staff pulling along a high-tech gurney. Steve walks up to Peter, "I'm sorry." Peter held up his hand, "Save it. There was nothing you could have done because if there was you would have done it. I saw what happened and swung back here as fast as I could to prepare the medical staff." They pulled Izuku out of the Quinjet. When Peter saw him bruised and battered, his heart rate increased while his muscles tensed and he asked Cap one question. "Is the one that threw the grenade still out there?" "No, they're incapacitated and under shield custody, probably already been sent to the raft." Peter takes a deep breath and calms down. A bunch of medical staff surrounds Izuku. "Lift on 3, ready 1, 2, 3, all the medical staff works together to carefully transfer Izuku over. They start hooking him up to all the gurney's pre-installed heart rate and vitals monitor. His heartbeat was faint, barely above the line, and his blood pressure was dangerously low. The staff starts moving him to the medical facility in the building. He needs a blood transfusion or he's not going to last. What's his blood type? Blood tests have not gotten back yet. Then get an O-positive bag. He needs blood now. Well, we don't have much, but it should be enough till he becomes stable." They arrive at the medical wing of Parker Industries. They set up a blood transfusion for Izuku to get more blood in his system. At which point his heartbeat leveled out. The surgeons on hand began to plan how to operate on Izuku. Steve and Peter stand outside of the room, not wanting to disturb the professionals doing their jobs. Steve decided to speak. "You think he'll make it?" Peter didn't take his eyes off Izuku. "I'll make sure that he will if I have the ability to help him. It's my responsibility too." All of a sudden Peter got a tingle down his spine and ran off towards the lab. Steve tried to ask where he was going, but Peter was gone by the time Steve even opened his mouth. Then the elevator opened and Logan stepped out of it with a fresh change of clothes, the previous ones having been incinerated by the RPG earlier. "Cap, nice to see you." "Logan, you were incapacitated longer than usual this time. What happened?" "Carbonadium round interferes with my healing." Logan sniffed the air. He sees the kid bruised and bloody. "What happened to the kid? Who did this?" Logan popped out his claws. "It was Zola, he's already in shield custody. The kid jumped on a black-looking grenade. Luckily it seems the backpack he had on him offered enough protection." Logan retracted his claws and sniffed the air again. "What is that smell? I thought my body pushed out all the carbonadium." Then he followed his senses and his eyes looked at the kid and he realized where the smell of carbonadium was coming from. He paid slightly more attention and noticed the blood bags attached to his arm. Wolverine yelled, "Get that blood pack off of him now." As if on cue, Izuku's body started convulsing as he started going erratic. All of a sudden Izuku's got up and coughed up a lot of blood and his EKG flatlined. Immediately one of the medical staff jumps on top of Izuku and starts performing CPR. Luckily his heart comes back online and starts pumping blood again. Just a lot weaker than before. "What happened?" one of the medical staff asked. Logan answered, "Carbonadium poisoning can suppress my immune system. I can't think what it's doing to the kid. The only reason he was probably doing fine was because of the blood loss. Most likely the lack of blood kept his body from circulating metal fragments of carbonadium. All of a sudden Peter came back from his lab. He had a canister in one hand and a secure adamantium briefcase in the other. He handed Logan the briefcase and then headed towards Izuku's bedside. One of the medical staff asked, "Mr. Parker, what are you doing?" Peter didn't even look at the man and answered, "Buying us more time." Peter attached an 4-line to the canister and without hesitation stabbed it into Izuku's arm and opened the valve on the canister. Suddenly Izuku's body temperature drops substantially, as does his heart rate. "What did you do?" asked the medical staff next to him. "I injected him with a chilling agent that can slow down biological processes without damaging their cells, but he lost a lot of blood, even though the heart is beating much slower and we are still going to need more blood." At that moment a person came in with blood test results. He seems to be O negative. Parker nods. "All right, let's get him a new bag now that his body is pumping blood a lot slower. We're going to need more blood so that there's enough to move through his body. Mr. Parker, we have a problem. That was the last O negative blood pack we had. We used the rest treating the people from the earlier cafeteria attack. Then start calling around at other hospitals. Someone has to have more O negative blood. Start looking at the employee files as well and ask if anyone is willing to donate if they have a matching blood type. With blood, the chilling liquid bought us another 2 days or so, but if we can't, we have about 15 minutes before he goes into cardiac arrest." "I'll do it." Everyone looks to the source of the voice to see Steve stepping up. "My blood type is O negative. I will give some of my blood." Peter looks at him. "Cap, it's an emergency. We wouldn't be able to take the traces of super soldier serum out of it. The kid takes to mutations very well. If we use your blood, any remnants of the super soldier serum in it could replicate in his system and very well replicate it within him. There's more than a slim chance of it happening. Do you understand that risk?" Steve looks at Peter and nods. "All right then. Someone go and get a blood transfusion kit and let's get this done," Peter said. One of the medical staff leaves to go get the kit as Steve went and sat down in a chair, and soon after the medical staff arrived with the transfusion kit and set it up. "There you go, Captain. It will take about 10 minutes to fill the bag. I'll give you some saltines and a sports drink." Steve sits there and contemplates why he agreed to give up his blood and remembers a similar situation from long ago. Camp Lehigh, 1943, Virginia. Dr. Erskine stands in front of Steve Rogers as they finish debriefing him about the experimentation that's going to happen tomorrow. "So Mr. Rogers, are you ready for tomorrow?" Steve looked at him. "Can I ask you a question?" "Just one?" says Dr. Erskine as he sits on the bed across from Steve. "Why me?" Steve asks with real curiosity. "Well, I guess that's the only real question that matters," Erskine replies. "You know I'm from Germany. But a lot of people forget that the first country that the Nazis attacked was their own. I had begun the creation of the serum as a way to help all those in Germany that were struggling as a result of the First War. They were all looking for a savior, and then along came Hitler with his parades and his shows of force. He hears of my work and says, 'You will make me an undefeatable army.' I obviously wasn't interested. Then one day one of Hitler's inner circle came to me and forced me to inject him with an incomplete version of the serum." Steve asks, interested in the story, "Did it work? Did he get stronger?" "It amplified every part of his character, including the darkness that was the very base of his character. This is why you were chosen. Because a strong man that has known power all his life may lose respect for that power, while a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion." Dr. Erskine stands up. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you must promise me one thing, that you will stay who you are, not a perfect soldier but a good man. Present day. Here you go, Captain Rogers." The nurse came back with a Gatorade and saltines and handed them to Steve. The blood bag was full and was taken into the room with Izuku. As soon as the blood starts to go into his system, his heart rate starts to completely level out. His vital signs seem to have stabilized. "We'll keep monitoring him." A sense of security fell over the medical staff and they were finally out of immediate danger. Peter finally took a deep breath. "I'll call Tony to tell him we stabilize the kid and that we need to talk about what happens next now that the kid has a mutagen in his blood." Logan walked up to Steve as he covered up his arm after he declined the bandage on his arm. "So Cap, are you sure you're okay with there being another enhanced super soldier out there? Why do you think the kid doesn't deserve it or something?" Steve asked, semi-annoyed. "Listen Cap, I talked all of 4 sentences with the kid and got a feel for his personality, and now I hear he jumped on a grenade with no regard for his safety. I'm afraid that when he pulls through this, the rest of us will be out of a job." Logan chuckled himself. "Hell, if I didn't have constant metal poisoning I would offer up some of my blood." Steve nods. "This might be the birth of the world's next big hero. Alternate Japan. Inko stirs awake, there's sunlight shining through the window. Her red puffy eyes were swollen from crying last night. She checks the time. It's 1 p.m. She didn't care, there was no reason to go to work today anyway. She looked at the table she had passed out on. Sprawled on the table were different photos of her baby. The one that she wouldn't see alive again. As soon as that thought crept into her head, she felt tears stream down her face. She tried to put herself together. She wiped the tears off of her face and started to look at her phone for what to do next. After all, what does one do when they've lost a loved one besides cry? But while she was doing this, one thought prevailed in her mind. She wouldn't wish this pain on anyone else. Stark had shown up with a surgeon about 5 hours ago. The surgeon immediately admonished them for spreading poisonous metal through the kid's system, but said that the cooling agent was ingenious and if he could get some sent to his hospital as part of his bill. They then started to put Izuku through every test possible so they could get a complete view of his current condition. It was now 3 in the morning and Parker was wide awake. He was running multiple simulations with the data they had gotten from scanning Izuku, and after each one he felt worse. Not that he didn't trust the surgeon that Stark brought in, but the numbers were saying that tomorrow was not going to go well. Peter looked at the briefcase he brought with him. Inside was something that he was going to use on Izuku if they couldn't find him any more blood, and right now it was tempting. Stark walks into the room drinking a cup of coffee and asks, "Can't sleep, huh?" Peter looked at him. "I'm sure you've had projects, keep you up till late at night." Stark looked at him. "Listen, I know that you are worried about the kid, but Strange will fix him right up. We ran the simulations and he's going to follow the optimum surgery path. The numbers don't lie, Tony." Peter looked exasperated. "Every time I think of the surgery tomorrow, not even my spider senses go off." Tony stares at him. "What's wrong then? Why are you so worried?" Peter looks at Stark. "Honestly, that kid shouldn't be alive and it's a miracle that he's breathing right now. Then I feel like there's something I can do to help him, even though I know it might be unethical, but my instincts are telling me to do it." Stark looks at him. "What exactly are you proposing here?" Peter's face was dead serious. "I want to mutate the kid." Tony spat out his coffee. "Are you mad? You're proposing to make the kid into a science project or something?" Peter got angry. "This has nothing to do with that. Listen, Tony, I'm pretty sure that kid died earlier and the only reason he's alive is because of the super soldier serum in Steve's blood. If we could get a mutation to stick, the kid would have a better chance of coming out alive. But the kid is fighting with death right now and I want to give the best chance of winning." Tony shot back. "Even if it would help him survive, we're taking a big risk here." Peter gets up and pulls out some data papers. "This kid's body is prime for mutation. His body is already taking the minuscule amount of super soldier serum that he got from Steve's blood and running with it. If we just give it a push, I'm sure it will take hold and the kid will be better off." Tony looks like he was starting to look convinced. Even if it does work, he would still be crippled. Not to mention there is still carbonadium shrapnel running in his system. We would have to find a mutation that could counteract that, and it's not like those grow on trees. "You could use mine," Logan says from behind. "I had a nightmare and was hoping you had some alcoholic sleeping aids in your office." "Not much of a drinker, but there should be some scotch in Doc Connor's office," Peter tells him. Logan leaves for a couple of minutes and comes back with a bottle of scotch and a couple of glasses. He pours himself one. "As I was saying, you could give him my mutation as well. You said he takes well to them. My healing factor could help with the carbonadium and help with the lack of arms or legs. Though I'm sure Xavier would love a wheelmate." Tony tries to argue back. "First of all, we wouldn't have time to do a proper scan of your mutant gene." Logan shot back. "Don't bullshit me, Stark. I know full well that S.H.I.E.L.D. has a full profile of the Weapon X program. Not to mention my mutation has been harvested and used without my consent for years. I'll gladly share it with someone who even Captain America trusts." Peter speaks up. "I have an adamantium drill we can use." Tony looks defeated. "Fine, let it be said that I tried to stop this. That being said, I don't want to be left out, so how can I help?" Peter answered, "Well, can you get a hold of the Vita chamber your dad used in Project Rebirth?" "No, that thing was torn down and the shell of it is at the Smithsonian. But using some old blueprints I could probably build one in about 3 hours." Tony heads out. While he does that, Logan comes with me. "We can get that bone marrow out of you in 1 hour and we can use the other 2 hours to pinpoint the mutated gene." Down in the medical wing of Parker Industries, Steven was up, and a lot of people would think a surgeon would need rest to perform at his best. But not Steven. He was practicing on the other patients that had gotten attacked earlier in the day. Some people would say that it's rude to call one's patients practice. But Steven needed to shake off the rust. But Steven's rusty work was still the envy of surgeons all over the world. While he was sutured and finishing off his 4th patient of the night, he was making a game plan of what to do for the kid he was hired to save. He had studied the scans they took of the kid and thought of them for hours. There was one thought that was present ahead of all the others. This kid should be dead considering the damage to his internal organs, but one way or another he still has a pulse. His body is fighting to survive and Strange is going to do his best to save him. Izuku opened his eyes and it was bright. He squinted his eyes. Am I dead? Izuku looked around expecting to see a field of flowers or clouds, but was surprised to see a man at a computer desk. The man looked up and saw a kid. What are you doing here? I wasn't expecting anyone today. I don't know, I just woke up and I was here. Izuku gets up to dust himself off, but notices he's in a hospital gown and that it's bloody. Yeah, that's how most people get here, but there are some exceptions. But you're not supposed to be here. Sure, you act like one of mine. But you don't belong here. I'm not the one who's supposed to be talking to you. I don't even know if you're supposed to talk to anyone. Well, just walk through that door when you're ready. Izuku was feeling a little tired and tried to leave through the door when he walked into a brick wall. The man at the desk spoke up. Well, isn't that strange? Most people walk right through when they finally decide to take the step. Seems like someone disagrees with the idea. But who am I to interfere if they want to stop it from happening? Why get in their way? Izuku was confused. What exactly is happening? The man at the desk spoke up. Let's just say that in a couple of hours either you go in through that door or you get yanked out of here. But in the meantime, feel free to pull up a chair while you wait. You know this one lady was in here for 37 years, but I'm sure that won't happen to you. Stark Industries. Stark had made good on his promise and finished a new and improved Vita-Ray chamber and in 2 HRS no less. Now he was going around his underground lab and taking things that might be useful, including his portable lab, some ultra-high-capacity arc reactor, including a prototype arc reactor that used harmonic reinforcement to hold a poor man's sun. To be fair, not enough to create a new solar system, but if it was to go haywire, it would probably have its own gravitational pull. The design fits 5 triangle arc reactors in the shape of a star with space in the middle for a catalyst and ultimately where the miniature star would form a star, well, fission reaction, but calling it a star reactor just sounds cooler. All he needed was to find the perfect catalyst to start the reaction and then the arc reactors would keep it stable, needing only 0.0001% of the power produced to do so. Then most importantly, some bottles from his personal liquor collection. He was about to leave back upstairs when he went by a sealed adamantium door. He stood there and looked at the door like it was calling to him. Jarvis begins the Project Infinity Forge opening process. Mr. Stark, are you sure? Jarvis blared and immediately locked down the elevator and a blue light scanned the room. Please step towards the control panel if you would like to proceed. Tony steps forward and puts his hands on the adamantium door. Begin biological scan. All of a sudden a bunch of different tendrils and scanners come out of the wall and start running a myriad of tests on Stark. Checking dental records, iris scans, blood vessel arrangement, fingerprint scan, blood test, and finally a CT scan. As well as the mental fortitude test couldn't let Stark react irrationally considering what was behind this door. Please speak the password, Jarvis says after he finishes his scans. Tony cleared his throat and spoke up. No Pepper, I hate the idea of having a three-way with you and Natasha. Jarvis scanned the voice sample and finally, the door began opening. In the middle of the locked room was a giant briefcase. Tony walked right up to it and looked to his left. There was a wall panel. Tony pushed in the screw in the bottom right corner of the panel and it opened up. Inside was a smaller briefcase with no noticeable seams. He picked it up and activated the security features on it. If anyone besides him tried to open it, it would activate a nitamine bomb. All right, Jarvis set up service on the way to Parker Industries just in case we have any uninvited guests. Back at Parker Industry, Peter was stumped. Logan's genetic sequence was in a way, just as impressive as Izuku's. Unluckily, it was not a mutagen but a mutation. If the kid's body had enough energy to produce adrenaline, then there might have been a way to get a reaction to happen. But expecting the kid to do any of the heavy work would be a mistake. There was also the problem of the super soldier serum fighting against Logan's mutation before Isaac's quirk could get a hold of it. Then all of a sudden Peter had a thought worm into his mind. He opened the briefcase he had with him earlier. He had cloned the irradiated spider that had bit him and crossbred it with the spider that had bitten Miles, resulting in a new super breed of spiders. That was then also crossbred with 30 other species of spiders, finally resulting in one breed, Kerastris Parker. This was his Victor Frankenstein moment, and after he had derived enough venom to fill 7 vials of venom, he buried and destroyed all the research and spiders. All that was left of those experiments was in this box. He took the failed Izuku Logan sample and just tossed it into the viale. All of a sudden the venom started to shine green. He put a drop of it into a machine. After 5 minutes the machine pulled up the stats. The sample was 50% stable. If we can get that Vita chamber where we could get it up to 90%. Back at Parker Industries' medical wing, Stan was washing his hands and gloving up. In a couple of minutes, he was going to perform one of the most difficult surgeries of his career, and the weirdest part about it was that he was somewhat excited about it. A year and a half ago, he would only do non-risque operations, then 1 year ago, he would only do it for the money, and then a couple of hours ago, he wouldn't have done anything for anyone unless it fell upon him as the last resort. He had taken a Hippocratic oath after all, he just wouldn't go out of his way to do it. But now why was he at Parker Industries now? If people found that he was charging Stark for this little excursion, they would think that he was back to his greedy ways. In a way, they would be right. But something about the kid currently on life support getting prepped for surgery made him want to give it his all. As he washed his hands, he remembered how he had gotten to where he is now. Sometime last year, he was leaving a party with his wife Christine Palmer. The party had been to announce his wife's PRGNNCY. When all of a sudden one of his special contracts came up to him and told him he was currently needed for an emergency. Strange, think of this as the last job you have to do for us. Not just that, we will also pay $50 million. So think of it like this, you no longer have to see us and you get a big paycheck. The way I see it is that you're getting the best of both worlds. Strange told his wife he would meet her when he gets home later and left with the man. Strange got in the man's car and they started to drive off. I want you to tell Mr. Manfredi that after this time he will no longer contact me. This is my last time working for him. The man spoke up, you can tell him yourself. Who do you think we would pay $50 million to operate on beside the boss? Wait, Manfredi's hurt. What happened? Nothing, just some Chrome Dome upstart had one of his goons take a hit out on the boss. It was 2 hours later and Steven was finally on his way home. He checked his bank account and there it was, his payment. When he had gotten to the makeshift surgery room there was a lot of blood. The person that had shot Manfredi had somehow hit the very bottom of the right ventricle, looking as if a bullet had cut through the heart. 1,000,000 to 1 shot, but there was no way someone could have made that shot. He would be dead of blood loss. That was if anyone else was operating on him. Someone with great skill had tried to kill this man and Steven took it as an exciting challenge. It was only later that he came to regret it. He was laid out in the middle of the road with the car on its side, currently pinning his leg down. They had been driving home after finding out the gender of the baby. They were spitballing names until Christine suggested Xander, after her favorite Buffy character. But Strange wanted to name him Oliver. Then bam, they were sideswiped. He looked over at Christine and saw that she was bleeding immensely. She had been launched from the car. He tried to move towards her, but his leg was pinned to the ground by his flipped-over car. You know, he thought that he was making the right choice switching his sports car for an electric SUV. You know, you need the space in the car for the kid and saving the planet and all that jazz. He realized he was in shock when he caught himself thinking about being carbon neutral instead of the fact that his wife was currently bleeding and his foot was pinned under the car. He realized he had to get to her or she would die from bleeding. He realized he couldn't feel his toes. This was good. He thought that could mean his foot was severed and all he had to do was pull what remained him out and he could then be next to his wife. He undid his belt and tightened it around his leg. He grabbed his leather wallet and bit down on it. He grabbed his leg with both hands and pushed against the car using his other leg. Even with the adrenaline running through his system, he could still feel his tendons ripping as he parted with his mangled foot. He looked at his work and noticed that his leg looked like it had gone through a grinder. If it spoke of his guts or simply shock, that he didn't seem to mind too much. He dragged himself over to his wife. But when he got close and saw what state she was in, he realized it was too late and couldn't do anything to save her. He was just there watching her pass. She was staring off into space. He sat up next to her and placed her head on his good leg so she would hopefully be more comfortable as it happened. Steven tried his hardest to hold back his tears as he noticed life slowly leaving her eyes. Parker Industry, present day. Steven shook his head. He entered the operating room and looked down at the kid. He wasn't going to stand aside. Not this time. He looked around the operating room and said one word. Scalpel. Alternate Japan. Here Inko was sitting on her couch in her pajamas. Sitting on the couch with the lights off. The only light bleeding out from the TV set. She would constantly switch between channels just to fill in the quiet that now permeated her apartment. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. Only now that the hunger felt like it was going to kill her was she cooking some instant noodles. She stuck them in the microwave and waited the 3 minutes. She sat down and realized that she had forgotten her chopsticks. Oh Izuku, can you? Her sentence got caught in her throat as tears streamed down her face. She could just picture him standing there giving her some chopsticks. Then made that All Might impersonation to cheer her up. She got up and left the cooked noodles untouched. She wasn't hungry anymore. She walked down the hallway to her room. But instead, she stopped in front of his room. She twisted the doorknob, hoping in her heart that as soon as she pushed this door in that he would be there at his desk filling out a notebook or sleeping in his bed. But that wasn't the case. The bed was well kept, undisturbed and empty. She laid down. She would just lay there for a little bit. She closed her eyes and the exhaustion finally took her. So here Izuku was, bored out of his mind in what seemed like a principal's office. The man in the room there hadn't looked up at Izuku since he had initially arrived. He was just typing away on his computer. Whenever Izuku tried to initiate a conversation, the man would make incoherent noises as if that constituted a satisfactory answer. Izuku suddenly felt a pain in his chest. Ow, what's this feeling? The man sitting at the desk decided to answer him. Don't worry. The anesthetic should kick in a bit. All of a sudden, Izuku's chest felt slightly numb. Then, there was a call over the intercom system. Would Cephas please report to management? I repeat, would Cephas please report to management? Suddenly, the man at the computer got up and reached for a door behind the chair, which Izuku could have sworn was not there a few seconds before. Cephas turned around to look at Izuku before exiting. He spoke and said, "Please don't touch anything. I'll be right back." He walked out the door, closing it behind him. Izuku was about to get up when, not even half a second later, Cephas walked in with a briefcase. He began to gather papers and files. He put his suitcase on the counter and entered the symbol Psi Omicron Zeta into the combination lock, and as the briefcase opened, a bright light shone out of it. Cephas simply grabbed some papers, stuck them into his suitcase, and closed it. Cephas walked around the room. He was grabbing things from filing cabinets and sticking them into the briefcase. Izuku spoke up. "What happened? Where are you going?" Cephas decided to answer him. "I'm going on vacation, so I'm picking out some work to do while on a break." Izuku looked at him. "You guys get vacations?" Cephas shrugged. "I don't know, but management said I do, so I won't argue. The last group that did that got cast out into lower management. Someone shall be along to take my place shortly. Good luck with whatever is going on with you." Cephas straightened out his suit and stepped out the door, which was gone the next second. Suddenly, another random door opened, and a man in a white trench coat walked through. The man sat down at the desk and changed the nameplate to Beyonder. Then he sat down, and only then did he notice Izuku. He waves his hand and the nameplate to say Frank instead. Frank spoke up, "Sorry, nobody told me I was going to have company, and I promised I wouldn't use all my powers while working here. So you can return to what you were doing before I got here, and I'll get to work." Frank typed one letter into the keyboard in front of him. "All right, I'm bored. So kid, what are you doing here?" Izuku yawned. He honestly felt slightly lethargic, and his body felt sore, but he also felt somewhat better, as if a great weight had been taken off him. But he answered, "I honestly don't know. The last guy that was in here didn't say anything." "Well, let's look up your file on this computer, shall we? What's your name?" Frank asks as he's already typing away. "Izuku Midoriya." Frank shakes his head. "That name is too strange. Your name is now Ike." Ike began to panic. "I like the old name my mom gave to me." "All right, Ike. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." He entered Ike Midoriya into the computer. No results found. "Huh, I wonder why that is." "Try Izuku Midoriya," Ike said. "Well, I don't know why that would work." Frank types it in. "Well, there you are. Why did you lie when you said your name was Ike, Izuku? You need to be more proud of the name your mom gave you." Frank looks through the file. Not much information on you. It just says waiting for a transfer order, and in place of origin, it says unknown. Time in existence says 10 days. You're a very developed infant." "But I'm 14. Izuku tried to correct him. "Wait, if it's wrong, then that means that you're like me. You're not in your home dimension." Parker Industries. Steven washed his hands and was de-scrubbing. "I've done all I can. I've collected most of the carbonadium from his wounds. That being said, even though he is now stable, he seems to have fallen into a coma. It's up to him now if he wants to make it through this. Even if he does, he will probably need physical therapy for at least a year." Steven tapped his metal leg. "You might also want to look into getting him some prosthetics. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll have to see if he wakes up first. I'll be resting at a hotel nearby. Please inform me if his condition changes. I'll be over as quickly as possible." Steven shook Peter's hand and started walking towards a town car they had gotten for Strange. When the car was out of sight, Peter returned to the elevator. Tony Stark has arrived at the back entrance with an armored Legion escort and heavy armor semi-truck. "Shall I activate security turrets?" As funny as that would be, he has what we need to save the kid's life. "Let him in." Peter got a call. "Thought about using your security turrets against me, didn't you?" Peter just hung up instead of coming up with a lie. He saw the security feed that Tony had the truck docked at the shipping receiving area and was unloading a large pod. Peter went down to the loading area. "So this is the new and improved Vita chamber?" Peter said as he watched Tony instruct Dummy on how to unload the sensitive equipment. "Yup, I made it with some of Dad's old blueprints and a regeneration cradle." "Do we need the cradle?" Peter asked, concerned. Tough as the kid is, Steve was conscious when he went through it. "We don't have that luxury." "What's with the box?" Peter asked as he looked at Tony's wrist. "That's a mystery tool that might come in handy later. Anyways, use your skeletal muscles to help load my portable lab into your freight elevator." Izuku was pacing back and forth, passing his hand through his hair. He saw Frank play solitaire on the computer in front of him. "What do you mean I'm not in my home dimension?" Frank kept playing on the computer in front of him. "It's exactly what it sounds like. Imagine having two ponds, one with goldfish and the other with turtles. Then, somehow, the turtle ends up in the fish pond. So what you are saying is the multiverse is real, and I'm somehow not in my home dimension." Izuku fell back into a chair he didn't even know was there. "If it were that simple, I wouldn't be impressed," Frank said while completing his solitaire game. "Now, pulling up Minesweeper." "What do you mean?" "Well, if it was just hopping across dimensions, that's easy. I do that accidentally when I sneeze. Hell, some of the humans in this universe can do that. No, what's different about you is the distance you traveled. Honestly, it should be impossible. It's as if a turtle was moved from one pond to another. But that other pond was across the country. What is surprising is how it got here. It's not like the turtle could walk. It would die on the way. Did someone carry it? But what purpose does that serve? It's not like it's all that special. No offense." Izuku had more or less zoned out after he said across the country. He didn't even notice the jab at his character or the apology offered afterward. He just sat there in shock, one thought coursing through his head: I am so far from home. How will I ever get back? "Oh, you have much more pressing matters than that." "Ha!" Izuku exclaims, his mind finally back in the moment. "I said you have much more pressing matters in the moment," Izuku heard loudly and clearly in his head. What could be more important than thinking of a way to get home? You do not have to yell. I'm right here. Unlike some people, I pay attention when people talk to me. As I said, you might want to focus on staying alive," Frank said while completing an expert-level Minesweeper map. Moving on to pulling up Space Cadet Pinball. "Huh, what do you mean?" Frank was a little annoyed having to look up from his currently active pinball game. "Man, you ask a lot of questions. Scratch that, you ask the same question repeatedly. Do you see that door?" Frank said, pointing at the door Izuku had tried to enter earlier. "That's the entrance to the afterlife. It is quite literally the threshold between life and death. When you cross over it, you move on to what you believe is after." Izuku was in full panic mode. "I can't die yet." Izuku got up from his chair and tried to put as much distance between him and the door. Sitting in the corner like a wounded and sacred animal, hoping that if he ignored it, it would go away, trying to make himself as unnoticeable as possible. "Why not?" asked Frank. "From witness reports, what lies behind that door is the most incredible adventure. Why return to the boring part if you are already at the reward stage? You did it, and you can rest now. No more expectations, no more hurt, no more ridicule, and no one telling you what to do or where to go. True freedom. You know, you mortals always look at death as something so scary when it is one of the greatest gifts he ever granted you. It's just been misrepresented by those who can't enjoy it and are stuck to wander forever. Is it sad when it happens unexpectedly? Sure. Should people try to expedite the process? I don't think so, but if it's the way the dice fall, the last thing you should do is fear it." Frank exhaled with a sense of melancholy. "Sorry, I was rambling there." The admittedly excellent speech had gotten Izuku to calm down. "I can't go yet. There is so much I have to do. There is so much I want to do." "Like what?" Frank asked, wholly engrossed in the conversation, forgetting the virtual pinball game. "Well, I've always wanted to be a superhero. Parker Industries." "Okay, how are his readings?" asked Peter as he ran around the lab, making sure everything was set up correctly. "Same as where earlier," answered Kurt. "Heartbeat is going steady. Neural activity is at the same low level as earlier, and blood pressure and temperature are still low. How are we doing on power, Tony? I don't want this thing to shut off when we're in the thick of it. The star reactor is up and running. Power converters have been built and installed. The cradle is functioning correctly, and the Vita ray emitters are primed and ready. All we need to do now is hook up the mutagen and insert a kid." Peter went and inserted each vial of mutagen into its proper slot. "All right, let's load him into this thing." Steve walked in carrying Izuku and slowly laid him down in the cradle. Then, he put the oxygen mask on Izuku's face. We need to cut off his bandages so they don't restrict his limb growth. Logan walked over and slashed at the kid's bandages, and they fell off, having been cut perfectly. The cradle closed up and, using its sensors, displayed Izuku's vitals. Alright, begin with the shot of penicillin. Izuku swatted away at whatever had just poked him. Are there mosquitoes in here or something? A superhero? Yeah, now that sounds fun. I could go down there with you, and we could kick significant but as Frank the Incredible and his not as cool but just as important sidekick Izuku. Sure would beat being up here. But I can't. I'm on probation. Frank started to look downtrodden. Then Frank got a devilish smile. But you aren't. Wait here. Yelled Frank as he ran through the door. He manifested out of nowhere. Izuku was once again alone with his thoughts. He does move a mile a minute, doesn't he? Okay, I'm back. Frank yelled from behind Izuku, causing the teen to jump slightly and scream when he noticed that Frank was carrying something that seemed to be fighting against his hold. Frank chastised it as if it were an unruly cat. Just something I got from the armory, a thing they call a spirit of vengeance. I'm sure old Zad won't mind. That sounds dangerous. Maybe you should put it back? Izuku said with a look of worry etched on his face. Nonsense. Nothing is too good for my sidekick. So take this, Frank says, shoving the ball of energy into Izuku's chest, causing the energy to bounce off and fly wildly around the room. Frank stuck his hand out and caught the wild energy. Son of a beach, put a child lock on it. If that's how you want to play it, I'll just make my own. Frank pulled blue paper with white lines on it out of who knows where and slammed the energy down onto it, immediately transforming the power into a blueprint. He looked around the blueprint and set out to make corrections with a pencil. Okay, now first correction. Fire is the source of power. What are we, troglodytes? This is the modern era. Let's change the power set from fire to electricity. Frank used his pencil not to erase but lazily crossed the word fire and wrote lightning in its place. Wait, but blue fire is more extraordinary than normal fire. Hey kid, what is your favorite color? Izuku was surprised at being called for answers. Blue, no, wait, I meant green. Frank nodded and wrote the word green above the word lightning. He started making more corrections. Let's keep the skeleton transformation because that's just badass. Change from BDSM gear to, hey kid, what's your country of origin? Japan. Samurai are perfect. A spirit of vengeance is excellent but also a little old-fashioned, and vengeance against what evil? That's a little self-righteous. I like to believe morality is subjective. So let's make it like a storm, neither evil nor good. It brings both salvation and destruction, depending on how you use it. Alright, all done. Frank signed his name on the bottom of the page. He pulled the energy back out, and it looked green now. All we need to do is stick this thing inside you. Frank steps towards Izuku as Izuku takes a step back. Are we sure that thing is safe? Asks apprehensive. Yeah, 100% okay, maybe like 70%. Look, I need someone there to be a hero and complete my dream. But being a hero is my dream. That's not important right now. Listen, how about if you take this? I will do you a favor in return. Could you send me home? Sorry, kid. I wish I could, but I am still on probation, so sending someone all across the Omniverse would be a significant violation. Oh, okay, just thought I would ask, Izuku said sadly. But maybe I could help you send a message. Parker Industries. The cradle closed around Izuku. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath. Tony was over by the controls, Kurt standing beside him, keeping track of Izuku's vitals. Logan posted outside the door to the lab just in case any other Hydra agents were hiding at Parker Industries. Peter stood by the cradle along with Steve, just in case they needed to act quickly. Peter broke the silence. All right, begin, the injection. Tony activated the injector with the press of a button. The vials were emptied one by one. They looked at Izuku's vitals, making sure they stayed stable as soon as the screen indicated that the mutagen had been fully injected. Peter nodded to Tony, signaling to start part 2 of the operation. Tony turned a dial slowly, and the Vita-Ray lights quickly pelted Izuku with radiation. As the power is increased, the screen reading looks optimal. Steve looks on in worry. Suddenly, the vitals on the screen start to go wild. Steve yells out to Tony, "Turn off the machine." As Steve is about to rip the door off the cradle door, Peter calls out, "Wait, keep it going." Everyone in the room turned to look at Peter like he was mad. Peter just said, "Don't believe in me. Believe in him." Frank had spawned on an exam table in preparation for sending a message when Izuku collapsed. Frank kneeled next to him. "Speak to me, kid. What's happening?" Izuku said through gritted teeth, "My body hurts." Frank noticed Izuku's door starting to open slowly. "Listen, kid, I know the deal was for me to send the message, then I bind the thing to you, but if you don't agree to this now, you will not live long enough to even send the message. So I need you to agree to the deal of taking the spirit first message afterward. Izuku nods. Frank grabs the spirit orb and bonds it with Izuku. Out of nowhere, electrified wires wrap around the door, forcing it to shut. Parker Industries. As Izuku's vitals were still going wild on the screen, Tony yelled out, "All right, that's enough, Peter. Pull the kid out." Peter shook his head. "We just need to hold on a bit longer." Steve moved closer to Peter. "Listen, we tried. It didn't work, but we gave it our best shot." As soon as Steve takes a step forward, Peter fires a web shot at Steve's feet. Tony is about to step forward to intervene when he looks at the screen. "Fellas, you might want to look at what's going on to Green Teen Wonder instead of having a showdown." They were looking at Izuku and saw that there was flesh beginning to grow on Izuku's stumps. Peter shouts out, "Tony, increase the power." I, Captain. Rea. Izuku looked around with a look of recognition. This was his apartment. This was his room. "Am I home?" Frank's voice could be heard coming from nowhere. "Sorry, kid. I told you I couldn't do that. This is simply one of those night memories you guys have. A dream." "Yeah," Izuku tried to hold back his anger and sorrow. "So what if I see her in my dreams?" "It's not yours, it's hers." Inko walked through the door. "Izuku honey, is that you? I knew you would. Come back home." She was about to hug him when she stopped. "No, wait, this is too perfect. This isn't real." As she said those words, the warmth and light left the room. "In a couple of minutes, I'll wake up, and my baby boy will still be dead." She collapsed on the floor crying. Izuku could not hold himself back anymore and joined his mom on the floor to embrace her in a hug. "If only I were a better mom, this wouldn't have happened." "Mom, don't blame yourself. I never did. There were times when I thought you should have said something different, but I would never trade you for any other mom in the world." "Mom, I don't know how to explain this, so I won't. I'll just tell you this is not dead, I'm stranded. I've met some good people who will help me where I am." She looks up at him and asks one simple question. "Will you ever come back?" Izuku holds his mom's hand. "Not even the universe could keep me away. But Mom, I need you to do me a favor." She looks up at her son. "I need you to keep going and live a full life even if I can't be there with you. I need you to keep smiling for the both of us." Inko just asked, "Izuku, how can I go on without you?" He smiles at his mom and says, "'Cause you are strong, Mom. I've seen it, and now I need you to be strong again. I know it will be challenging, but you have to take it one step at a time." After that, they sat there, hugging for what felt like hours. Izuku looks down at his hands and sees them start to fade. "It looks like our time is up. One more thing, your birthday present is in my second drawer. You can go ahead and open it. Just remember, Mom, this isn't a goodbye. It's simply a see you later." Parker Industries. As Izuku opened his eyes, he heard a single line. "Welcome back, kid. You've been gone for a while. Welcome back." Peter was sitting in a chair beside the bed Izuku was lying on. Izuku tried to check his surroundings. He felt something on his eyes and something covering his ears. "Why are my eyes and ears covered?" Peter said, "We figured they'd be sensitive to any stimuli. You haven't been awake for a while, so we thought it safer so that you wouldn't be overwhelmed. Here, let me get that for you." Peter reached over and started unraveling the wrappings. Izuku looked around. Everything was bathed in a dim red light. He looked around the room. He could make out some details, as it took his eyes a short time to adjust. He looked at Mr. Parker. He looked disheveled. He was wearing a wrinkled long-sleeved white button-up shirt. He had stubble growing, and it looked like he hadn't bathed. In fact, he could smell that he hadn't. He was about to say something when he felt a strong buzzing feeling coming from his head. It felt like stitching a muscle he had never stretched before. The more he paid attention to it, the more it felt like he had muscles all over his body that he hadn't known. But the buzzing one in his brain was the loudest, as if it was telling him something. Once he saw Peter, he could finally understand why. The feeling was telling him that he and Mr. Parker were of the same kind, and he didn't know why, but this made him feel comfortable. Izuku realized he hadn't said anything and was about to when Mr. Parker beat him to the punch. "What is the last thing you remember?" Peter asked. "I remember the bridge, and then maybe I remember seeing my mom, but I'm pretty sure that was just a dream. Other than that, everything else seems pretty blurry." Izuku tried scratching his chest when he noticed three things: his hand was strapped down. 2, he actually had a hand, and 3, a glowing star, was embedded in his chest. He thought for 1 second about which one to freak out about and decided on number 3. "What the heck is this thing?" Peter spoke. "Well, we had to improvise. 24 hours earlier." "What do you mean his body is healing him too fast?" Peter yelled at Kurt. Kurt responded, look, the human body heals naturally. With that healing comes the expenditure of energy. If it's not used, it's usually stored. But we just put the enhanced healing of not 1 but 3 enhanced people in the kid, and his body is starting to heat up fast. He had already used the coolant that was circulating through his system, and his temperature is rising fast. If we don't act now, it might be too late. Peter looked at the kid. What do you suggest? Kurt spoke up, we have to poison him slowly. Peter gave the doctor a look as if saying you're on thin ice. Listen, if we just inject him with some type of toxin or poison, we could keep his healing busy, and his body won't heat up. What toxin would you suggest? As you said, he heals fast, anything too weak, and it won't even have an effect. We could try botulinum toxin. Peter shook his head. Even if it did work, how would we administer it continuously? Plus, I don't want the kid to look like a smooth-faced supermodel. Kurt chuckled. We could try asking Logan how he suppresses his healing factor. Where did he go anyways? Peter answered, the nearest high-end liquor store with Stark. He said he needed to pick up some cigars and some booze to replace yours that he drank and get some for himself. Tony said that we have to celebrate the creation of one of the strongest people in the world, and that's not done with beer, so he went to get champagne. Kurt shook his head. So that's who drank my liquor? So what do we do? Peter relented, give him more coolant, just enough to keep him going until Logan gets back and we figure out what to do. 23 hours earlier. As Logan and Tony got back from the liquor store, they were filled in on the situation. So, in short terms, how do you deal with your healing factor? Logan thought for a bit. I never really had a problem with my healing factor acting up. I can use the energy up and cause my claws to heat up, which is useful in cutting through things, and I'll heal a lot slower as a side effect, but in terms of suppressing it, I don't know. After a short pause, Logan spoke, what did you guys come up with? Peter pointed a thumb at Kurt. He suggested Botox. Logan chuckled. Why? Botox. You trying to turn him into a model? Kurt defended his decision, I'll have you know that botulinum toxin is one of if not the most dangerous toxins in the world. Logan answered back. Besides the fact that you suggested giving this to a kid, would it work? Peter answered, we don't know. We thought we would ask you before we went ahead with anything. Throughout this entire conversation, Tony had been tinkering with his new arc reactor and another piece of tech and finally spoke up. Aren't we glossing over the most obvious answer? Metal poisoning, I mean, didn't the carbonadium slow down your healing factor? Logan gave an exasperated huff. Damn near stops it, and I'm sure once the kid wakes up, he will agree it is not the most pleasant experience out there. Tony thought for a second. Then not carbonadium, so let's think about this. You say you have a healing factor, but you still develop scars. If your healing factor were operating at its peak speed, those wouldn't form, so there is something slowing your healing down. We just have to figure out when that started happening. Logan tried recalling. Well, some of my memories are a little fuzzy, but if I had to say it was probably after the Weapon X program. I remember before that I could shave and cut myself, and I wouldn't even bleed now. I'll at least lose a drop of blood. Perfect, so it's either the stain of a heavier skeleton or perhaps as time has passed, adamantium particles have busied your immune system to allow the apprentice of scar tissue to appear. I'm willing to bet it's the latter, considering how agile you still are. I can imagine your general muscle structure more or less quickly adapted to the weight, it's the metal itself. So if we give the kid metal poisoning, it should busy his immune system enough to where he doesn't have a severe endothermic reaction going on his body. Logan spoke up, English pleases. Tony answered sarcastically, we give kid bad metal so he does not heat up. Logan popped his claws. It's one thing giving a kid a healing factor, but if you're suggesting bonding metal to his skeleton, that's where I draw the line. Tony put his hands up defensively. Whoa, put away the claws. Vega, no one is suggesting bonding it to his skeleton. I'm suggesting this. In his hands, Tony held up the star reactor, and attached to it was a small machine. Connor and Peter looked at it curiously. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the Infinity Forge. Using enough power can take sounding molecules to strip them of their protons, neutrons, and electrons and reconstitute them into a completely different form from an element to a molecule as long you provided a sample for the machine to analyze. The best part is that the resulting product is stable. Pete looked at him. So what are you suggesting? We have the kid hold onto the thing in his room and treat it like a dialysis machine. Tony stayed silent for a second and then spoke. We could do that, or we could. Tony looked down at his own reactor. Peter looked at him with the realization of what he was implying. You want to install it onto the kid? Tony grinned. Essentially, yes, it could supply a constant amount. It could be on a schedule or decreased at any time. Logan decided to speak up. I know I'm not the smartest when it comes to science, but how exactly would this help? Tony chose to speak. Well, if his natural energy is being used up to get rid of the metal from his body, I'm assuming it would make it easier to breathe or sleep, or not live like a most likely immortal 14-year-old. We inject him with some metal, and if his body ejects it from his body as well as resulting in a temperature drop, we go through with it, and if not, I'll drop it, I won't bring it up again. Peter wanted to say no, but if it could give the boy a better quality of life. He tried one last time to dissuade Tony just as much as himself. Isn't that thing really expensive? I mean, you were guarding it pretty intensely. The box itself looks like it could keep out the Hulk. Tony just shrugged. That's the best thing about making your own toys. You can give it to whoever you want. Besides you, Logan and Cap all trusted the kid enough to share your power. I feel like I could trust him with my tech. Peter relented. Alright, none of this is causing my spidey sense to go off, so run some tests, and if it turns out that it works well, go ahead with the install. But since you were the one who suggested it, you get to be the one to analyze his waste fluid to make sure his body is discarding it properly. Tony's face went blank. What? Peter pointed at the catheter bag that was on the 4-pole. Alright, Logan, come with me. Well, we can extract some of the adamantium from your blood so that the forge can scan it. We will leave Tony here to run some tests. Logan nodded. Alright, let's leave, Pissboy here to deal with this. I'll follow you. Tony didn't know how, but he was going to get Logan and Peter back for this. Back to the present. Izuku was hanging on to his every word. Long story short, we found that it did, in fact, work. So we installed the IF to the back of your sternum, and the star on your chest is more or less a wireless power source for it. We had to install it close to your heart. So that the metal had enough time to spread through your system when we injected it, it healed too quickly, so the energy usage was minimal. This way, the metal goes directly into your heart and is spread through your system. Izuku thought for a bit and decided to accept this reality at face value so he could figure it out later anyway. Okay, second question, why are my hands tied down, and how do I have hands? It's fuzzy, but I remember them being gone. Well, to answer your second question, your new healing factor is to thank for those. To answer your second question, I want you to promise me you won't freak out. Also, it will probably hurt a bit. Izuku nodded, and Peter instructed him what to do next. Hold your wrist straight with your arms and clench your fist. Izuku did as he was instructed, and then he felt a slight sting of pain. Then, with a snick, 2 bone claws popped out in between his index and pointer and pinky and ring finger. We didn't want you to hurt someone accidentally. So, we strapped your hands down. It was then that Izuku smelled it. He didn't know how he could recognize it, but he did. Mr. Parker, can you show me your arm? Peter showed his arm and pulled down the sleeve. On his arm was a fresh bandage. Did I do that? Mr. Parker, I am so sorry. Peter assured him. Hey kid, it's okay. Accidents happen. Izuku tried to hold back his tears but couldn't, not because he was sad but because he was happy. He had to ask Mr. Parker one thing. Do you think I can be a hero with this? Peter laughed as if it was something obvious. Kid, you took a grenade without even thinking if you want to be a hero, you'll be the best of them all. Izuku couldn't hold them back anymore and let the waterworks flow. Alt Japan. Inko looked around and couldn't see anything. She waited until her eyes adjusted and gave a long stretch for the first time in a few days. She had slept well. She had the best dream from what she could remember. But then she remembered the reality of where she was and what the reality of her life was. It was just a dream. Wasn't it? She decided to check the drawer. There was no harm in checking, even though it would probably be empty. Her birthday was so far away, so why would Izuku buy a present now? She was about to pull the handle, but she hesitated. If it was empty, it meant that what she dreamed was just a ploy from her brain to help her cope with her loss, and that would mean her son had passed. She could leave it and pretend it was in there to keep the illusion alive. No, she had to know to let it get squashed and maybe look up some grief counselors afterward. She tentatively opened the drawer, and there it was, wrapped in green paper, a small box next to it, a book that said personal journal. On the gift tag, she could read, to Mom, the best one in the world. She fell to her knees and started bawling, my boy is alive. Logic would dictate that she had just spotted the present earlier. She was just misremembering, but no, she knew her memory. She hadn't opened anything in Izuku's room, afraid that she would disturb the last thing she had of her dead son. But he wasn't dead. This proved it. She could go to the police with this information but saying that her evidence was revealed to her in a dream, even in the world of quirks. That would be a little far-fetched also, given the fact that they would ask why her son wouldn't have given her a location probably wouldn't do her any favors. No, as far as the law was concerned. Her son was dead, but she knew. He was just lost where she didn't know, but he didn't seem distressed, and he said that one day he would return so she would have faith in her son. She was about to think of something else when a foul odor hit her nose. What is that smell? Then, in embarrassment, she realized that it was her. She had spent a couple of days crying and hadn't bathed in the meantime. She got up and went to rectify that as soon as possible. One extensive shower later. Inko stood in her bathrobe right in the middle of the living room. She was drying her hair when she decided to turn on the TV. In other news, it has been 3 days since the unfortunate incident happened in Mutation, where a single boy was held hostage, and it seemed All Might, although saved the day, was late to arrive at the scene of the incident. Some say one of the other heroes on the scene should have made a move, pointing to that incident a couple of months ago where the water hose heroes were left crippled and unable to continue to perform any more heroic duty. The other newscaster spoke up. Were they not killed? No, they were saved by a mysterious vigilante. Sadly, it seems that the vigilante's quirk was out of control and resulted in his death and the complete breakdown of his bones and flesh turning to ash. No clues of his identity, the only evidence of him being there the video captured and the results of his action. Some speak to it being the fault of trigger use gone wrong, others point to quirk doomsday theory. Regardless, the Heroic Safety Commission's official stance is that no person should be operating in heroics without a license and that the man would still be alive if they allowed the pros on the scene to do their duty. Inko flipped the TV off. She had on a fresh set of clothing and picked up the phone. She had a lot to do. She had to inform her boss that she was ready to pick up a couple of shifts at the pet hospital. But right now, she just wants to talk to someone face to face. She dialed Mitsuki, but the phone did not even ring once before it was answered. Hey Inko, are you feeling better? I know, dumb question. I can't imagine how someone would feel after what you went through. So what's up? Inko wanted nothing more than to tell her about the dream but decided to hold off. Would you like to go out and have a couple of drinks, just you and me? Mitsuki answered immediately. Hey, Han, I'm going out to meet up with Inko. Will you be able to manage without me? Inko could hear Masaru on the other side of the phone. Sure honey, I could hold down the fort for a second. Hey, Masaru. Hey Inko, have fun, and I'm sorry about what happened. Tell Katsuki I said hi. Hey brat, your aunt Inkyo says hi. What was that, you old hag? If you want to tell me something, come tell me in my room. Mitsuki spoke in an almost scary calm manner. Can you hold on a bit? I need to strangle my son. I'll meet you at the usual place. With that, Mitsuki hung up, and Inko headed for the door. Here she was, one step from the outside. She was strong. She could do this if not for her son. Chapter 11 Making Sense and Change. Izuku looked at himself in the mirror. He hadn't really gotten to look at himself until now, and he would be lying if he said he didn't like what he saw. He was a whole 7 inches taller, 6 feet tall, and at 14, which was astounding. He could see muscle definition under his shirt, which he swore he would only see on pros who were also into building muscle. The weird part came in the fact that his face had also changed a little. It was more defined in a way. At least his jawline was slightly more pronounced. He still had the smallest amount of baby fat, but only to the point where he still looked like a teenager. He couldn't help himself and started flexing in the mirror to show off his muscle definition more. He hemmed. Izuku turned around as fast as he possibly could, slightly embarrassed and trying to hide the fact that he was checking himself out in the mirror. Standing there was Mr. Parker, who had a plate full of food, a clipboard, and a tray of food. He smelled the air and immediately knew what it was but decided to confirm his suspicions as well. Is that Katsudon? Yeah, I looked around Yelp and found the highest-rated restaurant. I thought you deserved a reward for surviving your whole endeavor. Izuku chuckled for a moment. You know, it's weird, everything has been changing so quickly I've just been trying to make sense of it. For example, I used to know how to speak a bit of English enough to hold a conversation, but ever since I woke up, it's been easier to understand it, to the point where it feels like it was my first language. Peter chuckled. Well, isn't that convenient? Izuku answered back, you're telling me you don't think I could stand a whole conversation with your Japanese. Peter took mock offense at the comment. You wound me, sir, and here I brought you your favorite dish. But yeah, one of the things that was enchanted was probably your mental flexibility. A thought occurred to Izuku, and he decided to speak his mind. What exactly did you guys do to me? I guess that is the only question that truly matters at the moment. Peter sits at the table in the room and puts the food down across from him. Sit and eat. You can listen to me ramble while you eat, besides, you are going to need a lot more calories going forward. Izuku sat down and grabbed the chopsticks next to the katsudon, and began his meal. So first things first, the big bandage we have to rip off is you're not in your home universe anymore. At those words, Izuku lost control of his strength and snapped his chopsticks. Wait, what do you mean? Peter shifted in his seat a little. Well, I don't know if it's a thing where you come from, but here we believe in a concept called the multiverse. Where there is more than one universe in existence. I don't know exactly how, but I believe that you were pulled here by the collider. At that moment, things finally snapped into place for Izuku. Wait, what about my mom? What is everyone at home thinking? The more he started thinking, the more his heart rate increased, the stronger his senses got, and it all began to seem like too much. He was breathing faster now. He was breathing too much. He abandoned her. She's alone, and it's all his fault. He was hyperventilating now, and everything was too loud. He needed to be anywhere, but here he was, about to run for the door, when a sound came from the reactor in his chest, and his heartbeat started to slow, and he was fully pulled out of it when Peter put a hand on his shoulder. Kid, you okay? Peter looked at him with concern. Yeah, I think I'm okay now, at least mostly. It's just how are you supposed to react to the fact you're stranded in a different universe? Peter looked at him. Izuku, look at me if you want to go home if this is what you truly wish. You have my word that I will do everything in my power to get you back there. So, anything you want to ask. What happened to the captain? Oh, you mean Steve? Yeah, him, Tony and Logan went to a steakhouse on 72W36th. They needed a small break, and Tony said he was buying. Who's Tony? Peter remembered he hadn't met him yet. Well, his hero's name is Iron Man. Wait, hero? Izuku got up, completely forgetting his Katsudon and running to the desk next to the sick bed. He pulled it open and grabbed his notebook and a pencil. He turned to a fresh page and wrote down the name Iron Man. So, Iron Man. Does he turn into metal? Is he made of metal? Is it actually iron, or is that just nomenclature? As far as I know, Tony doesn't have a mutation. Then how is he a hero? Tony is one of the most intelligent men I have met. Just don't tell him I said that. He has a big ego problem. But he used that intelligence to build a suit of armor and used it to help people. Peter pulled out his phone and showed Izuku a picture of Iron Man. He drew it into his notebook, and an image appeared on the page that looked as if it had been printed onto paper. Izuku asked about Logan. How is Logan with them? I saw him get taken down at the cafeteria. Peter explained he's actually where you got your new healing factor from, as well as the bone claws. Izuku moved his wrist. If he focused, he could feel the claws resting within his forearm. Then we have Steve to thank for your new height and extra muscle physique. Any other questions you have? Peter had gotten thirsty and went to grab a water bottle. He started drinking from it when Izuku asked his next question. So, how long have you been Spider-Man? At that question, Peter choked on the water he was drinking. Izuku got worried. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you choke. Peter waved him off. No, it's fine. Just when did you figure it out? Well, I've had a hunch ever since I woke up, but you kinda just confirmed it. Peter laughed. Man, villains, and secret organizations have been trying for years, and I out myself to a teenager. Okay, I guess I can share my story, but only if you share yours with me. Alright, let's start with question 1. What is your world like? Izuku put his hand on his chin. Well, I don't know what it's like here, but in my world, about 80% of people have what we call quirks, and they have been around about 100 years. Peter was quite surprised, 80% in 100 years. Wow, here are the earliest signs of the X genes that, as far as I know, are traced back to the 1700s, and even then, the percentage of people who have an expressive X gene is only about 0.002%. Peter spoke, okay. Second question, what is the deal with the notebook? Izuku started to explain, well, I've always wanted to be a hero, and since I didn't have a quirk, I figured if I was smart enough, I could still attempt to be one. Peter thought for a second. That's all well and good, but you were trying to be a hero. Shouldn't you have focused a little more on the physical aspect, like working out a bit? No offense, but you were kind of skinny. Izuku looked a little embarrassed. Hey, that was 2 questions. Anyways, Izuku tried changing the subject. How old were you when your spider quirk manifested? Peter straightened up. Actually, I'm not a natural-born mutant, I got my powers from a radioactive spider. Now it was Izuku's turn to choke on something, this time being air. They proceed to go back and forth like this for a couple of hours. Time had flown by. The sun was setting on the horizon. Peter decided to tease Izuku with his next question. So you got anyone special back home besides your mom? You know, boyfriend, girlfriend, non-binary, whatever floats your boat. Izuku stated, stuttering, no, nothing like that. I don't like boys like that, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just not my thing. But yeah, no one really wants to date the outcast. What about you? Peter shook his head after chuckling. No, I never had the time. After I got my powers, things just always moved so fast. Don't get me wrong, there was this one girl I liked. Her name was Liz, glasses and nerdy. I just didn't want to involve anyone in the dangers of my life. My aunt almost got me a date to prom with one of her friend's granddaughters, but I had an incident with a lizard villain. I didn't even end up meeting her. The closest I got in my adult life was with the secretary you met downstairs. But we ended up deciding we were better off as friends. However, we do have a pact that if neither of us is married by the time we're 40, we would just hitch the knot. They were about to keep talking when Tony burst through the door. He saw Izuku, went up to greet him, and stuck out his hand. Hey there, kid. Nice to meet you. My name is Anthony Edward Stark, but you can call me Tony. Izuku took his hand and shook it. Nice to meet you, Mr. Stark. Thank you for bankrolling my operation and, saving my life. Tony gave a curt no. No problem. Anyways, Parker. I wanted to talk to you about something. We are both founding a school, and you are one of the new teachers at the Xavier Parker Stark School for the Gifted. Also, we're enrolling the kid. Both Peter and Izuku spoke at the same time. What? Alternate Japan. Inko took in her surroundings, waiting for Mitsuki to arrive. The bar was more of a lounge than anything, and even then, she hadn't been in a location like this in a while. She was sitting at a booth when she heard her arrive. Inko got up to hug her and Mitsuki pulled her into a tight embrace. I know I mentioned it on the phone, but I just have to say I am so sorry for what happened. I wish you could have been there for you as soon as it happened. Inko tried not to break down crying. It's okay. I know that you had your own circumstances going on. With Bakugo getting attacked by a villain and everything. I could imagine you being ready to comfort a friend at the time. How is Bakugo holding up anyway? Mitsuki took a deep breath. He's holding up fine. The doctor said that he might have lung and vocal cord damage from the villain forcing his way down his throat. They say Hell slowly starts going mute as his vocal cords degrade. Luckily, his voice was the only permanent damage he sustained. You would think that's the case, though, considering how much yelling he's been doing around the house. I figured I'd just let him, get it out before he can't anymore. Mitsuki let out a melancholy sigh. Sorry, look at me, I'm rambling. Hell, my problems seem inconsequential compared to yours. Inko looked at her best friend and answered. You are having problems. I don't think one can really be worse, so don't belittle your problems like that. Mitsuki laughed. Man, everything you've gone through, and you're the one comforting me. So, how are you holding up? Inko took a deep breath. Better now, I just had to get out of the house, and try to get my mind off of things. They sat there talking for the next couple of hours, just going back and forth, reminiscing about the good old days. They had started with just light drinks and topics. But at one point, the rice wine came out. After that, the night became a blur. At one point, Masaru showed up to pick up Mitsuki. He greeted Inko and threw a passed-out Mitsuki over his shoulder. Who knew he had that type of muscle? Inko pulled her phone out and was ready to call a cab. Only to realize it was dead. Crap, I should have charged it before leaving. Well, I guess I'm walking. She started gathering her things and headed for the door when someone grabbed her arm. Hey there, you look pretty nice for an older woman. Why don't you come home with me? Inko was too intoxicated to care at the moment and was about to take a full swing at the creep's face when someone spoke up. She actually came here with me. The creep and Inko both looked to where the voice came from. Standing there was what looked like an anorexic blonde man. The creep smiled. Yeah, right, she ain't the prettiest, but even she's way above your league. Inko didn't know whether to feel insulted or flattered at the man's words, but considering the circumstances, she decided to settle on being offended. Was the tension in the air building, or was it just the fact that she was drunk at the moment? Inko didn't know. But any perceived tension went out the window when another voice was heard. Is something going on here? The man is still holding on to Inko and asked, and who are you, a-hole? He's not the one being an a-hole. The man laughed, and Inko realized where she had seen this man. The name is Naomasa Tsukachi, Detective Naomasa Tsukachi. I might be off the clock, but I can still get some of my colleagues down here to handle this situation. The man let go of Inko, put his hands up in mock surrender, and started to walk away. Inko looked at the man with conflicting feelings. He was the man that made her think her son was dead. Then again, he was only doing his job, plus Inko wasn't even fully sure he was alive, so she couldn't really blame him. So she decided to judge on what he did for her now and not what he had done then, so she decided to speak up. Thank you for the help. Even though she swears she probably could have handled it herself, that was probably the alcohol talking. I should probably get home. Once again, thank you, detective, and thank you, mister. She waited for the blonde man to answer. Oh, it's Toshinori Yagi. She nodded and spoke, that's a cute name. Well, thank you as well. Toshi blushed slightly at the compliment. Inko tried to walk away elegantly but was stumbling as she moved forward. Yagi spoke up, we could give you a ride. She turned to look at them. No, thank you. This lady can handle herself. Naomasa stared at Toshi. What? Naomasa just shook his head. You just can't help yourself, can you? You were doing so well recently. She needed help, plus she reminded me of someone I used to know well, at least her hairstyle. The person I knew would have just laid creep out with a punch. Naomasa laughed. So what you're saying is that she caught your eye? In those words, Toshi stared, stuttering and blushing, and was about to go on a tangent about the teasing when they heard a loud thump. They both rushed out the door, and there was the same creep from earlier knocked out on the floor with a bruise clearly forming on his face, and Inko passed out in a drunk stupor. Tony, Steve, and Logan were sitting at a table when Tony spoke up. All right, fellas, order whatever you want. Just don't get it well done, that would be a crime against humanity. A waitress came by and smiled. Can I get you, fine gentlemen, something to drink? Tony answered first. Scotch on the rocks. Vodka, no ice, Logan followed. I'll just have water, said Steve. Tony stared at him in disbelief, and Logan chuckled as if he had expected the answer. A water, really, Cap? Steve looked unbothered. What? I like water. What's wrong with water? Tony gave him a disapproving look. Nothing if you're eating field rations. But we're about to enjoy some well-marbled steaks. Please, at least order something with flavor. Hell, I'd prefer a rum and coke over just water. Next thing you'll tell me, you're getting your steak well done, and if you do, I swear, I will hit an old man. Steve rolled his eyes. Fine. I'll take a bottle of schnapps. Chilled glass. The waitress scratched out water and jotted down schnapps. I'll be right back with your drinks. I'll take your orders then. Tony leaned back. So, what's everyone's plan after this? Logan spoke first. I need to head back to the mansion. Spring break's about over, and we want the kids ready for school again. Steve raised a brow. I thought Xavier's was already a school. Logan grunted. More like a home for runaways. You need more than 5 adults to run a proper school, let alone meet any credentials. Tony looked intrigued. Who do you have on hand? Logan thought for a moment. There's me, Aurora, Hank, and Xavier. That's enough to handle things if the kids get out of control or if someone attacks. But it's not a faculty by any stretch. Tony laughed. Never thought I'd hear the day when Wolverine used the word faculty. Logan shrugged. Kids change you. What can I say? He turned toward Steve. Where's the good old captain heading? Before Steve could answer, the waitress returned with their drinks. All right, what can I get you guys? I'll have the filet mignon, medium rare, said Tony. T-bone, rare, Steve added. Porterhouse, blue, Logan finished. The waitress noted their orders and walked off. Tony sipped his scotch and smirked. You know I like some red in my meat, but blue rare? Even I think that's going too far. Logan took a sip of his vodka. I like the flavor. Tony considered for a second and realized he liked steak tartare, so he didn't really have a leg to stand on, just like Strange. Anyway, Tony said, back on topic. Steve, you got any plans? Steve shook his head. Once I get my new suit, I'll just go wherever S.H.I.E.L.D. sends me, be it a mission or a vacation. Tony frowned. Man, that's kind of sad. Ever think about getting a life outside of work? You know, find a girl, settle down? Steve gave it a moment's thought. Just don't think that's the life a guy like me gets to live. Tony chuckled. I don't know, Cap. I hear girls like the martyr type. Logan chimed in. Tony's right. Not about the martyr part, but it's a hell of a lot easier getting through the day when you've got someone to come home to. Or multiple someones, Tony quipped. Steve thought it over. If I were going to go for that kind of life, I'd want someone who's used to this type of work. He glanced at Tony. What? About you? Any plans? Might make a new suit. Maybe I'll fund a new scholarship or something. I don't know quite yet. Just then, the waitress brought out their steaks. They were about to dig in when a voice cut through the air behind them. Mind if I join you? Before either Logan or Steve could turn around, Tony answered without hesitation. Yes, we do mind. Fury, now get lost, we're about to have lunch. Nick Fury ignored him and pulled a chair from a nearby table. This is urgent. Without missing a beat, Tony replied, then leave an urgent message. Steve interjected, what is this about, sir? Tony groaned. Don't give him an in. Now he's not going to leave. He's like a cat that way. He already made the trip here, Steve reasoned. You and I both know he wasn't going to leave anyway. Might as well hear him out. Tony cut a piece of steak and savored it. All right, Fury. I'll bite. What is it you wanted to say? Fury didn't hesitate. The council wants the kid. At those words, the mood instantly turned cold. Logan clenched his fists, ready to pop his claws, and Steve subtly shifted, prepared to intervene. Tony stayed calm. Why does the council want some random kid? Don't they have better things to do? Fury didn't play games. Cut the crap, Stark. We know the kid's a super soldier now. Tony's jaw tightened. Of course you know. What, Hydra's not the only one spying on Parker Industries now. You keeping tabs on Stark Industries too? Fury let out a short laugh. Two of the brightest minds on the planet, and you think we're not watching? But no, this didn't come from your staff. At least, not at first. Vita radiation has a very distinct signature. With enough spectrometers in the right places, you can track it. Just in case some rogue nation starts building super soldiers. Tony gritted his teeth. Right. That's the reason. Not so S.H.I.E.L.D. can get first pick during a lab raid. So why are you really here? You're hoping we'll hand the kid over? 'Cause two things. First, he's not our property. Second, we're not handing him over. Fury leaned forward. If I wanted the kid, do you think I'd be here asking? I'm warning you. Get him out of there. Fast. I don't know how long the council will sit on their hands. The three heroes shared a look. Steve handed Fury his glass of schnapps. Sir, can't you stop the council's decision? Fury took the glass and drank. Hell, I'll probably be reprimanded just for warning you. Any more than this and it'd be treason. But if the council doesn't get what they want, I won't be the one in charge anymore. And whoever they pick to replace me won't be nearly as pleasant. Logan stood. I've been on the run before. I'll get the kid out of Parker Industries and head off ASAP. I'll stick to backroads, swing by Xavier's for gear, and lay low in one of my safe houses near Toronto. Just another face in the crowd. Tony sighed. I'll send funds through encrypted channels. Might as well be the comfiest runaways in history. He paused, thinking deeply. Actually, if they want a weapon, let's give them one. The others looked at him, unsure of what he meant. Hey Fury, Tony said, didn't the council want my suits? Fury raised an eyebrow. You offering them a suit in exchange for the kid? They might go for that, but I wouldn't count on them keeping their word. Tony shook his head. Not a suit. We promised them a weapon. A tool. A solution. Logan scowled. So what, we train him and then hand him over? Yeah, that's better. Tony leaned in. Remember how I got S.H.I.E.L.D. to back off? I became useful. I made myself indispensable to the government. We do the same with the kid, but not just him. Every kid. You've all seen the reports: mutant killings, rising tensions. That resentment? It can be dangerous. But we can use it. Logan crossed his arms. Most of those kids just want to live their lives. And they should, Tony said. But the council doesn't care. So we give them something they do care about, a school. Open to anyone but especially those with unique gifts. Next time something catastrophic happens, we'll have people ready to respond. People who feel like this country didn't abandon them. Steve asked, won't the council want control? What stops them from taking it over? If they do, they lose support. Not just from me, but from Stark Industries. And probably Parker Industries, too. We make a place where the next generation can thrive. Mutants, geniuses, anyone with potential. With Stark funding, it'll have the best tech and brightest minds pushing the future forward. Tony sliced into his steak, watching Fury for a reaction. He knew the director was nearly sold, but Fury never gambled unless he could win. Fury narrowed his eye. Do you even know what it takes to run a school? Tony shrugged. No. But I know someone who knows someone. He turned to Logan. So what do you say, Logan? Think the professor would like to run a school for gifted youngsters? Logan just laughed. Please. That's his DMN dream, pardon my French. Fury stood and straightened his coat. I'll make a call. Back in all Japan. I can't let him get this. I won't let him get this. The stranger looked down at his right hand. He clutched the syringe even tighter than before. Only now, with the adrenaline wearing down, did he notice the large gash on his right side. Need to get stitches, he muttered, looking around and noticing the dark skies. Hospital's out. They'll ask too many questions. Probably call the cops. He probably owns the cops. Can't go there. He pulled out his phone. Gotta make this quick, no telling if they can track it. He turned it on and typed in his search, nearest pet hospital. As soon as he got a location, he smashed the phone against the pavement. Then he flagged down a late-night taxi. Don't ask any questions except for where I want you to take me and I'll pay triple. The cabbie just shrugged and accepted the offer, driving into the night. A few moments later, fog crept along the ground, thick and slow. From within it, a well-dressed man made of smoke appeared, his form swirling faintly in the streetlights. No, Garaki, there doesn't seem to be anyone here. Are you sure this is where you picked up the signal? He looked down and noticed the smashed phone lying in the gutter. It seems the target was here. Smashed his phone. Who knows where he is now? He exhaled, smoke curling upward from his collar. I'll try looking around. See if I can find any evidence. Check the local hospitals and such. Let's see where our very own Nozumi Kozo disappeared to. Chapter 13, Pressing the Issue. Tony Stark steps up to the podium, adjusts his tie, and surveys the room. Tony Stark, welcome, everyone. Please, have a seat. Now, I know it's not every day I call a press conference on such short notice. Who am I kidding? This is basically my MO. So, why have I gathered you all here today? Who here was privy to what happened a while ago on the Manhattan Bridge? Many saw a tragedy. You know what I saw? I saw one brave individual, a teen, no, a kid, a hero. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. I know that word is politically charged. But let's be clear, this young man didn't have a cape, a shield, or a billion-dollar suit. He had courage. He acted not because he had to, but because it was right. That's the essence of heroism. Now, I'm not here to unveil a new suit or announce a merger. I'm here to talk about the future, our future. We live in a world where extraordinary abilities are becoming increasingly common. But what about extraordinary minds? Exceptional talents? Today, I'm proud to announce the opening of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. A place where individuals, be they prodigies, savants, or those with unique abilities, can come to learn, grow, and push themselves beyond limits. This isn't just a school, it's a sanctuary. A place where the extraordinary is nurtured, not feared. Where potential is realized, not suppressed. And let me be clear, this institution stands independent. It is not a government facility, nor is it under any agency's control. We've seen what happens when fear dictates policy. When those in power seek to control rather than understand. That ends now. Xavier's is a beacon of hope, education, and empowerment. Walking off the stage, Tony was flanked by Pepper and Steve. Hey Pep, didn't know you would come to the press conference, Tony said. I didn't either. It would have been nice if you had informed me, you know, as your head assistant, Pepper replied sharply. Spur of the moment thing, Tony shrugged. Speaking of which, nice job with the speech there, Steve. So, do you just think of those off the top of your head, or do you practice in front of the mirror? Steve ignored the teasing. So, how do you think the council is going to take it? Tony shrugged again. I don't know, but I'm guessing not well. Let's try calling Fury. Tony pulled out his phone, dialed Fury, and put it on speaker. So, Fury, how did the council take it? Oh, they're said, Fury replied immediately. And they're already trying to find ways to get the kid without backlash from the press or the community. But for right now, you've officially bought yourself some time. Also, one of the council members asked if you could enroll one of his kids. Tell him to send in an application, and we'll see if she's a good fit, Tony responded. He hung up and immediately called Peter and Logan. Told you it would work, Tony smirked. Logan answered, okay, so we open this fake school, make a solid legal defense to keep the kid protected, and teach him how to protect himself. Tony raised an eyebrow. Fake? Oh no, I was serious, Logan. We're going to open the school. Wait, you were serious? Logan asked incredulously. Yeah, like I said, I believe in the future. Pepper decided to interject. No offense, fellas, but do any of you know how much trouble it is to run a school? Not to mention how hard it is to find the right faculty. Tony waved it off. No, I'm rich. I've never found a problem I couldn't throw money at, and if there is, I haven't seen it yet. When it comes to hiring managers, I know a pretty good one. Pepper backed away immediately. Oh no, I'm busy enough running Stark Industries. No, you're not. We'll hire someone to fill your position. By we, you mean me, Pepper retorted. Yeah, because you're so good at it, Tony quipped. Peter chimed in over the phone. Not that I don't just love hearing you guys flirt. Pepper and Tony immediately denied it. Flirting? Who's flirting? Strictly professional. Disregarding that, Peter spoke, I have some personnel that I think can be of some assistance. There's one person who handles my appointments at the front desk of my building who I think would be a great help. Tony, piecing together who Peter was talking about, tried to shut it down. What? No, I don't think she'd be a fit for a school. She dresses way too scantily. Plus, she shows way too much cleavage. Logan spoke up, paid great attention to that, didn't you? Steve joined in, isn't that the girl who rejected you when we arrived at Parker Industries? Pepper interjected, wait, she rejected you? Maybe she would be of some help. Tony spoke up, not helping. Speaking of help, Peter continued, I think I'll help with the hiring process. The last time I delegated that to someone else, they apparently hired a Hydra agent. So this time, I'll conduct one-on-one interviews with everybody. Pepper post an ad. Now hiring, experienced educators for Xavier's School for Gifted Minds. Are you ready to shape the future? Xavier's is more than just a school, it's a community dedicated to unlocking extraordinary potential. We're searching for visionary educators who can inspire prodigies, savants, and gifted individuals from all walks of life. What we offer: state-of-the-art facilities and cutting-edge resources. A diverse, inclusive, and supportive educational environment. Competitive salaries and exceptional professional growth opportunities. A chance to teach, mentor, and collaborate with some of the brightest minds of our generation. Who we're looking for: passionate teachers committed to excellence and innovation. Educators experienced with extraordinary or uniquely talented students. Faculty who thrive in dynamic, groundbreaking educational settings. If you're ready to challenge yourself and make an impact on tomorrow's leaders, Xavier's is the place for you. Apply today and help redefine what education can be. Alt Japan. Inko arrived in front of the pet hospital. Glad I was able to pick up a shift. Probably should have specified I wanted a morning or afternoon shift, not the night or early bird. Inko called up her boss. Hey, Mr. Doritoru? Yeah, I just got here. She took out her key and put it in the keyhole when she noticed it was unlocked. Hey, Mr. Doritoru, did you happen to leave the door unlocked? The new temp worker might have? Okay, I'll look around to make sure nothing is out of place. Inko walked in and tried to turn the lights on, but nothing happened. Must be the breakers. She closed the door behind her and was heading toward the utility closet where the breaker box was, when someone came up from behind and slammed her into the wall. She tried to yell for help, but they put a hand over her mouth and spoke. Don't panic. Don't scream. I'm not going to hurt you, so calm down and don't freak out too much. Now, if you promise not to yell, I'll move my hand. So, you promise not to yell? Inko nodded her head yes. All right. As soon as the man moved his hand and dropped his guard, Inko swung her head back, slamming the guy in the face, and then elbowed him in the ribs, bringing him down with a grunt. She booked it, crossing the front desk. She was about to launch out the doorway when she noticed blood on her elbow. Then she noticed the guy wasn't following her. Common sense was telling her to run and not look back. Despite that, she turned around and headed back into the pet hospital, where she noticed the man had collapsed on the floor where she had elbowed him. His breathing seemed labored, and his skin was pale from blood loss. She knew she should call an ambulance, but judging by how he looked, they wouldn't make it in time. It wasn't her responsibility. She was frozen in place when she suddenly heard a weak call for help come from the mysterious man. One thought popped into her mind, the image of a little boy with green hair. I want to grow up and save people. Inko shook her head, focusing on the present. Nakamura Harima was not a good man, but he wasn't a bad one, at least, he didn't think so. Who cared if he was a thief? His great-grandfather did it, and unlike his distant cousin, he actually carried on the spirit and gave to the poor. Now here he was, bleeding to death in a pet hospital. At least since the lady ran away, she wouldn't get caught up with his pursuers. Don't move too much. There, by his side with a first aid kit, was the woman. No, he had to warn her. RRUR. The woman spoke. Shush, be quiet for now. The lady put a pencil in his mouth. Here, bite down on this. I need to pack the wound and press down on it, and I don't want you to bite your tongue off by accident. Nakamura bit down. The lady asked, Are you ready? Nakamura nodded his head yes. 3, 2, 1. Outside, it had started to rain and thunder. Chapter 14, First and Last Steps. Harima was in hell, and considering what he'd done in life, he probably deserved it. That didn't make having someone disinfect a wound with hydrogen peroxide any less agonizing. He bit down on a pencil, every instinct screaming at him to scream. The woman working on him felt strangely familiar. She reminded him of someone he'd known once. Not a friend, not quite, but someone decent. Her hair was green, unlike his memory, yet there was something about her face that tugged at his memory. Too bad that person had died. Too bad that was what happened to good people. Can you stand? The woman asked softly. I'm not in the best shape myself. I won't be able to move you onto the table unless you help. Harima nodded. She braced him against her body as he forced himself upright, her hand never leaving his wound, pressure firm and steady. Step by step, they shuffled to the animal operation table. Once he was down, she moved fast surgical staples, clean rags, a bucket, disinfectant, tissue adhesive. She returned, breath a little unsteady. Okay. I've done this before, she said. Mostly on pets. But anatomy's anatomy. Open your shirt. Harima tried. His fingers slipped uselessly against blood-soaked fabric. She stepped in to help, fumbling just as badly, before sighing and grabbing scissors. The shirt was cut open in one clean motion. Harima smirked weakly. Wow. Wouldn't have pegged you as so forward. She didn't even blink. I'm not into younger men. He chuckled, then pulled out a cigarette and lighter. The lighter vanished from his hand. What? I was just gonna. She pointed to a large metal tank beside them. Pure oxygen. One spark and this place goes up. Harima raised both hands in surrender and slid the cigarette and lighter into the pocket of his ruined shirt. Fair enough. As she leaned in to clean the wound, he spoke again, quieter this time. Let me ask you something. Do you think people can change? I've done things I'm not proud of. Things I can't take back. Do you think doing something good really counts for anything? She paused, considering. I think if you're truly trying, she said at last, then all you can do is take the first step in the right direction. Then another. And hope that, eventually, people see where you're headed. She returned to her work, methodical and careful. Disinfectant. Adhesive. Staples. The pain was sharp, but controlled, almost distant. There, she said, exhaling. That should hold. Thank you, Harima said. He gestured weakly at her. Inko. Well, Inko, he said, I'm Harima. She nodded. Try not to move too much. We should call an ambulance. You need a real hospital. Before we do, Harima said, any chance I could get some painkillers? Inko shook her head immediately. No. Just because I'm sewing you up doesn't mean I'll give you narcotics. And even if I wanted to, they're locked behind glass. I lost the key. Harima picked up some of the used gauze in his hand and snapped his fingers. The pencil vanished. A pill bottle appeared in its place. My quirk, he said weakly. I can swap items as long as I know where they are. They're within a mile, and smaller than a shoebox. He squinted at the label. Oxycodone. That'll do. The bottle was taken from his hand almost as fast as it appeared. No, Inko said sharply. Absolutely not. We're calling an ambulance. Before she could move, a voice echoed from outside. Harima Nakamura. I know you're in there. Harima was on his feet instantly. He grabbed Inko, shoved her into a nearby utility closet, and pressed a finger to his lips. Whatever happens, he whispered, don't come out. He reached into his left-hand pocket, and in it was what more or less looked like an EpiPen and 2 small pills. He took the pills, forcing them down his gullet. The door shut. Harima turned back toward the main room. Dark mist coalesced into a familiar shape. Kurogyri, Harima said. Good to see you again. Mr. Nakamura, the figure replied smoothly, I commend you for lasting this long. Well, Harima said, I've always been hard to catch. That is no surprise, given your lineage. A descendant of Nozumi Kozo. Harima smiled despite himself. And related to the of Setsuno and Seiko families. The smile vanished. Don't compare me to them, Harima snapped. Shoplifters and swindlers. Bold words, Kurogyri replied, for a thief. I believe in redistributing hoarded wealth. Moral justification does not alter definition. Fair, Harima admitted. Point conceded. You're stalling. Harima spread his hands innocently. What? I'm simply enjoying a conversation with my favorite inert gas. Where is the perma-trigger? Now what makes you think I would have something like that? Like you said, I'm a thief. Because you were friends with its creator. More like acquaintances. Be that as it may, all of the previous labs have been ransacked, along with the research being disposed of, and you have been spotted at every single one. My employer would very much like to have it, and we believe you have in your possession the last viable version of the pills and serum. Ah yes, the boogeyman of the underworld. Find it funny that he's only trying to get it now that my friend is gone. Consider it a professional courtesy. Horseshit. Your boss was scared. Regardless, I don't know what to tell you, I don't have it. We could offer you a hefty sum. Sadly for you, I'm trying to take a step in a new direction. It makes me feel good. Kurogyri appeared right in front of Harima. I have no time for your foolishness. Tell me where the product is unless you want to lose something you are heavily attached to. At those words, a portal appeared at the tip of his hand, and Kurogyri moved it up until it was situated against his torso. He began closing the portal, starting to cinch on his flesh. You have 3 other limbs I can do this to. If you cooperate, I'll make it painless. Squeeze away. The portal began to slowly close, breaking his collarbone. He held in his scream and taunted Kurogyri. Is that all you've got, you pansy? At which point there was a disturbance from the utility closet. Kurogyri looked toward the closet. Harima showed panic on his face. Oh? Is there someone else in here with us? Harima spoke up. No, just testing if it kicked in yet. In Harima's other hand was a mop. It seems it has. At the utterance of those words, Harima swapped Kurogyri with an old acetylene tank from one of the old labs. Good that the quick trigger has such a short activation time. He looked down at the arm that was previously in the portal. Most of his hand was unscarred except for a missing middle finger. DMN. That was my favorite finger. He went to the closet door and looked down on Inko. She was crouched into a ball. I'm sorry, please don't hurt me. Inko, it's me. Listen. I'm sorry about what I'm about to do. Harima grabbed the EpiPen-like device and stabbed it into Inko. Ow, what was that? That is something you can't tell anyone about. Not the cops, not friends, not the heroes. If someone hears you have that in your blood, you will be dissected and experimented on. Then why did you give it to me? Because you're a good person. And if he would have wanted anyone to have it, it would be someone like you. Now I'm gonna get you out of here. What about you? Inko, I'm bleeding and being chased. I would never make it a kilometer, never mind to the hospital. Now hold still. He placed his complete hand on Inko. What are you doing? Taking the first step. Inko blinked, and when she opened her eyes, she was in the back of a parked taxi. Back at the vet's office. A dark mist appeared. Welcome back, Kurogyri. Kurogyri seemed surprised. Wondering what I'm still doing here? Well, I figured I teleport you away, you come back. I teleport you away, you come back. Considering I took the perma trigger, this would go on and on and on until we're both dead. You could surrender yourself to dissection. I promise it will only be one of the most painful things you've ever experienced. Harima laughed. Have you noticed it's really easy to breathe in here? How big and hot would an explosion be if you were to trade all the air in a room for pure oxygen and acetylene? Kurogyri's eyes widened as Harima put a cigarette in his mouth and pulled out a lighter. Kurogyri began to warp away as Harima sparked the lighter, the last thought going through his head being, I'll see you when I get there, Shade. As the building exploded in a fireball of 150 F. Kurogyri appeared at his bar, being launched against the wall in a slightly singed suit. A voice came from another room in the building. Hey Kurogyri, if you're back, can you make me some pizza bagels? In a moment, young master. Allow me to catch my breath, Kurogyri says as he looks up at the ceiling while lying on the floor taking labored breaths. Meanwhile, Inko was walking home when she hears an explosion off to where her place of work is located. She starts to head over when all of a sudden she gets a migraine. She looks at the place where Harima injected her, it looks inflamed. All of a sudden, a feeling of exhaustion washes over her. She makes her way home. The door seemed to be locked. She looked for her key, she didn't know where it was. She wanted the door to open, and it did. She didn't question it. Her sight was getting blurry. She was sweating. She took her clothes off. She laid down. She was cold. She wanted her blanket. It was on the floor. She didn't want to reach over, she wanted it to come to her. Then it appeared in her hand. She covered herself and passed out. Marvel Universe Hospital. Peter stood at the end of the parallel bar. Come on Izuku, you can do it. Izuku was sweating. This was his first unassisted steps, one after the other. He reached the end. I did it, man, healing factors are crazy, doing all this in 10 hours. I should be ready for our trip to the school grounds in a couple days. Logan spoke up from a stool. Focus on that later, see if you can do a couple more passes on the parallel bars. We have to work on your stamina and some upper body strength, think you can handle that. Izuku smiled, bring it on.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.